You can't sleep. Again. Your eyes ache from the blue glow, your brain fizzing with the residue of scrolling and clicking and refreshing. The apartment feels too small, the silence too loud, and you need to do something, anything, that feels like forward motion. That's how you end up on the half-empty street at 12:47 a.m, staring at the fluorescent rectangle of a 24-hour copy shop. The sign buzzes faintly, casting harsh light onto cracked pavement. Inside, rows of sleek machines hum in patient chorus, and behind the counter a bored employee scrolls through their phone without looking up. You tell yourself you're here to print something, a form. Notes from last week's meeting, something productive. The kiosk screen glows as you fumble with the file upload, watching the progress bar inch forward, while the machines around you whir and click in their automated rhythms. The back hallway catches your eye while you wait. A door marked Staff Only hangs half open, revealing a corridor that stretches into dimmer light. The modern printer symphony fades as you step through, replaced by something older, the echo of concrete and metal, the smell of dust and oil that speaks of machinery from another era. In the far corner, cordoned off with velvet rope, and a hand-lettered sign reading Heritage Demo Do Not Use, stands a letterpress. It's massive, all black iron and heavy wooden components, bolted to the floor like it grew there. The platen is thick as a Bible, the lever handle worn smooth and stained with fingerprints and ink from decades, maybe centuries of use. You duck under the rope because the room is empty and because sleeplessness makes you bold. The press looms as you approach, its presence somehow alive despite its stillness. On the ink-stained wooden table beside it sits a warped type block, carved with ornate letters in a script that seems to shift when you try to focus on it. That's when you notice the brass tag wired to the frame. It's small, easy to miss, engraved in tiny precise letters. MAINZ, Gutenberg, first complete run. Your fingers trace the edge of the cold metal. It feels authentic in a way that makes your skin prickle. On the side of the frame, near where the handle connects, someone has scratched a message with something sharp. A nail, maybe, or a knife tip. 1455-0824, 020. All clocks. First pull. Chime. Behind you, the modern printers continue their patient work. Their hum feels suddenly rhythmic, like a countdown you haven't started yet, like they're waiting for something to synchronize. You read the scratched message again. Feed a fresh sheet. Set your devices, all of them, to that date, that time. Work the press so your first complete pull lands exactly when the modern machines finish their jobs and sing their completion chimes. It's absurd. It's the kind of thing you'd scroll past on some obscure forum at 3 a.m, half convinced it's creative writing, half wondering, but your hand is already reaching for your phone, and the date time settings glow up at you like an invitation. You look around. On a shelf nearby, someone has left stacks of thick cream-coloured paper, the real stuff, with visible fibres and weight. You take a sheet, feeling its roughness against your fingertips, so different from the smooth copy paper feeding through the machines in the other room. The paper slides into the press bed with surprising ease, like it was meant to fit there. You adjust it, making sure it's centred, feeling the ghost of some long-ago printer's muscle memory guide your hands. Your phone's settings screen looks wrong when you scroll back to August 1455. The numbers don't want to stay put. They flicker and reset twice before they hold. You do the same with your laptop balanced on the edge of the type table, and your watch, an old digital one your dad gave you, the kind with actual buttons. Through the half-open door you can see the modern printers. One large machine is deep into a run, collating and stapling with mechanical precision. A digital display shows pages remaining, 47, 46, 45. You turn back to the letterpress and test its motion. Roll the bed forward, feel the weight of it. The form, empty now but you can imagine it inked and ready, would press against the paper with tons of force. You grip the handle and pull slowly, feeling how long the motion takes. From the start of the pull to the full slam of the platen against the paper, maybe 3 seconds, maybe 4. You rehearse it mentally, wait for the printers to near completion, watch for their lights to shift from green to amber. Listen for that cascade of chimes. The shop has 5 machines, and when they all finish at once, it's like a digital choir. Your watch ticks toward 2001 in its impossible medieval time zone. The printers are at 12 pages remaining. Then 8, then 5, you grip the handle. The first chime pings, high and bright. Another joins it. Your hands move before your brain catches up, yanking the heavy lever down. The platen descends, slow and inexorable, and even though there's no ink, no type, you feel the press close like a mouth around the paper. The final chime rings as the platen slams home. The fluorescent lights stutter. The smell of toner sharpens, then twists into something older, metallic, organic, the scent of linseed oil and iron and sweat. The floor seems to drop just an inch, just enough to make your stomach lurch. When everything steadies, the light has changed. Candles, dozens of them, stuck in holders and melted onto surfaces, casting shadows that leap and dance across low wooden beams. The walls are closer, rougher, medieval plaster over timber frame. The air is thick with smoke and the overwhelming smell of ink. Real ink, not toner. 2 wooden presses dominate the cramped space, both in operation. Apprentices move between them with practiced efficiency. Young men in rough tunics and rolled sleeves, their hands stained black to the wrists. They speak in quick German and occasional Latin, their voices low and urgent. Racks of metal type cover one wall, each tiny letter gleaming in its compartment. On tables between the presses, wooden galleys holding composed pages, leather ink balls, stacks of fresh paper, and piles of printed sheets hanging on lines to dry like laundry. You turn, slowly, and see him. The man matches the portraits you remember from textbooks, but older, more worn. His hair is thin and grey, his face lined with the kind of exhaustion that comes from years of insufficient sleep and too much worry. He leans over a proof sheet with a magnifying lens, checking each line, each letter, muttering to himself. Gutenberg, Johann Gutenberg. Here, real. You take a step and an apprentice walks through your shoulder. There's a cold shiver, a sensation like passing through a curtain of ice water, and then he's past you, carrying an inked form to the press. He didn't see you, didn't feel you. You're a ghost here, an observer. The realization settles over you with strange relief and stranger loneliness. On a nearby table you see the pages. The layout is unmistakable. 2 columns of dense text, ornate capital letters starting each section, Latin words in the beautiful angular script of the Vulgate Bible. This is it. The thing that will change everything. The work has a rhythm. You watch an apprentice lock a form into position, see another spread ink across the raised type with practiced strokes of the leather balls, watch a third lay a fresh sheet with careful precision. The press operator pulls the bar, and the platen descends with a thunk that you feel in your chest. When it rises, the sheet emerges transformed. Blank space now filled with perfect, identical letters. They're whispering about timing. You catch fragments. Investors waiting. A deadline. Whether this run will finally be complete. One apprentice mentions missing leaves from previous attempts. Another talks about a broken plate that cost them a week. This is the night, you understand. The night when it stops being an experiment and becomes real. The first complete run. The first time all the pages come together, all the technology works, all the promises to nervous investors get fulfilled. You drift closer to one of the forms waiting for its turn at the press. The type is backward, mirror-written, each letter a tiny metal sculpture precisely placed and locked into a frame. Reading it makes your eyes ache, but you can pick out words, in principio, in the beginning. Then the knowledge arrives, not like memory, but like something downloading directly into your awareness. The return rule. You have to change something. One letter. Slip it out of place. Turn an E to a C. Shift a letter in a name. Create a tiny deliberate error in the form. Then, at dawn, when they're pulling what they think are perfect pages, you have to correct it. Put it back. Make it right again at the exact instant the press slams. Shut. The spray of ink, the burst of paper dust in that moment, that's what will match the toner haze back home. That's the door opening in reverse. But there's something else, deeper and darker. Each time you do this, each time you slip into this moment and tweak the source code of printed information, your present recalibrates. The world you return to will have bent around your change. Literacy rates might shift. Censorship laws might tighten or loosen. The texts that people consider foundational, canonical, required reading. All of it could shuffle like a deck of cards. You're standing at the moment when mass printing begins, when information stops being rare and hand-copied and starts being reproducible, infinite, world-shaping, and you're about to introduce a glitch. Even briefly, even if you fix it. The temptation is enormous. You could change something that matters, a word in a key verse, a name in a genealogy, something that would ripple forward through centuries of theology, politics, revolution. But the rule is clear. One small letter, and you have to fix it. An hour passes, maybe two. The apprentices work without pause. Gutenberg moves between the presses, checking, correcting, occasionally snapping at someone who's made a mistake. You can see the weight on him, the debt, the pressure, the knowledge that everything depends on this working perfectly. When the ink table erupts into brief chaos, someone knocked over a container, black ink spreading across the wood, you move. The apprentices rush to contain the spill. Gutenberg curses in German. No one is watching the waiting forms. Your hand, ghost hand, invisible hand, reaches toward the metal type. You're not sure how this works, whether you can actually touch anything or just will it to move. But when your fingers close around a single letter in the middle of a word, you feel it. Cold metal. Solid. You lift it out. An E in the word veritas. Truth. You slide a C from the edge of the form into its place. Veritas. Wrong, but in mirror form, in candlelight, with tired eyes checking it quickly it might pass. An apprentice returns, glances at the form, sees no obvious gaps or disasters. He nods to himself and begins the process of locking it in. You watch them ink it. Watch them position a fresh sheet. Watch the press operator test the handle's resistance, then pull. The platen descends. The paper receives its impression. When it lifts, the page emerges with your error printed on it. Veritas, in the middle of a dense paragraph that few will read closely, that even fewer will question. The world doesn't end. The workshop keeps working. But you feel it. A subtle vibration, like reality adjusting its weight distribution. Hours pass. The eastern windows begin to pale from black to deep blue to grey. The apprentices are exhausted but energized, working faster now, driven by the approaching deadline and the growing certainty that this time, finally, it's working. Every page is coming out clean. Every form is printing true. Gutenberg holds up a finished sheet to the growing daylight and smiles. Actually smiles, for the first time since you arrived. Perfect, he says. This one is perfect. They load your form back into the press, the one with the error. They're going to print it again, confident now that everything is flawless. You position yourself next to the metal type, watching the operator prepare for the pull. He tests the ink one more time, positions the paper, grips the handle. Your ghost fingers find the wrong letter, the C where the E should be. The operator begins his pull. The platen starts its descent. You yank the C free and slam the E back into place in the fraction of a second before the metal contacts the paper. The press closes with its thunderous thunk. Ink sprays microscopically into the air. Paper fibres compress under tons of pressure, and you press your entire awareness into that moment of correction. The act of making truth spell itself correctly again. The workshop tilts. Candlelight becomes fluorescence. The smell of linseed oil twists back into toner and electronics. You're gripping the letterpress handle in the copy shop's heritage corner, fresh sheet in the bed showing a faint backward impression that fades even as you watch it. The modern printers are singing their completion chimes. Through the doorway, the employee glances back, sees you standing there, shrugs like you've been there the whole time. Your legs are shaking. You don't remember them feeling this week before the crossing. On your way out, you pause at the little book exchange shelf near the door. One of those take a book, leave a book things. You've passed it a dozen times without really looking. Now you stop. The selection seems different. There are more dense philosophical texts than you remember. Religious pamphlets mixed with political manifestos. A surprising number of people apparently come here at midnight to trade heavy reading material. At home, you can't sleep. Different from before, the insomnia now charged with something else. You search for the Gutenberg Bible on your laptop. The articles are familiar but slightly off. Some details about the printing process are explained differently. The number of surviving copies varies by 3 or 4 depending on which source you check. You search for most important book ever printed. The results show a list, but it's not quite the list you remember learning in school. A few titles have shifted position. One book you're certain should be there isn't mentioned at all. Over the next few days, you notice other things. A conversation at a coffee shop where someone quotes a passage from Romans, but the translation is slightly different from the one you memorized in that college theology class. A news article about censorship in another country, referencing a banned book you don't remember existing. Your search algorithms, people also ask section shows questions about canonical texts that feel both familiar and foreign. The world is the same, but it's also not. 3 nights later, you're back at the copy shop. You tell yourself you're just checking, just seeing if it was real. The letterpress is still there, rope barrier still casually draped. The brass tag gleams in the fluorescent light. The scratched instructions remain. You know you shouldn't. You know each crossing changes something fundamental, but your hands are already reaching for the paper, your phone already opening to the date settings. This time you change a marginal note, something that might have been included as a scribal comment, or might not. You watch the process with more confidence now, understanding the rhythm of the workshop, timing your correction to the exact moment of the press's slam. When you return, you discover that a particular scholarly tradition started earlier in your history. A debate that shaped Reformation theology happened in a different city. 3 books on your shelf at home have different cover art, and when you pull one down, the introduction references a definitive edition, published in a year that doesn't match your memory. The 4th crossing, you change a page number. Just 1. It seems so small. But page numbers determine how passages are cited, how scholars reference texts, how information is indexed and found. You return to find that certain quotes have different standard citations. A famous phrase appears on a different page in every edition you check, and the internet can't decide which page is official. The 5th crossing, you alter a name in the colophon, the section that lists the printers and craftsmen involved. Just 1 letter in a surname, a U, where a V should be. When you come back, a whole family of printers has a different legacy. Their descendants founded different printing houses, published different books. Several landmark censorship trials happened over different texts, because the families involved in publishing were different people. You start keeping notes, trying to track what changes, but your own memories are unreliable now. Did you learn about the Index Librorum Prohibitorum in high school or college? Was the First Amendment always about protecting printed material specifically, or has that emphasis grown stronger? Were there always this many independent bookshops in your city, or fewer? The copy shop employee starts recognizing you. Late night again, they ask, and you nod, too tired to explain that you're not sure if it's late or early anymore, if you're moving forward through time or sideways. The 6th crossing is different. When you arrive in the workshop, everything feels layered. You see the apprentices moving, but you also see ghost images of them in slightly different positions, doing slightly different tasks. The formes show multiple versions of the same pages, overlapping like double-exposed photographs. Gutenberg looks directly at you for a moment. Impossible, you're not there, you're not real, and his expression is exhausted beyond words. He turns back to his work, but you wonder what he saw, what he's been seeing. You realise that you're not just changing your present. You're creating branches, versions, parallel runs of the same historical moment. The first printed Bible exists in multiple quantum states now, and your world is trying to hold all of them simultaneously. The apprentices prepare another form. You stand over it, looking at the perfect arrangement of letters, and understand that your next choice matters more than the others. You can feel the weight of the decision pressing down like the platen itself. One more change might push your world toward a reality where information is wildly free, but almost impossible to verify, where every text has multiple official versions, and truth becomes purely subjective. Or it might create a world where a narrow set of approved text dominates everything, stable but suffocating, where the canon is rigid and deviation is suppressed. Or you could do nothing. Let this run print exactly as it did the first time. Let this version of history stabilize. Your hand hovers over the type. The apprentices move around you, unseeing. Gutenberg checks another proof sheet, his hands trembling slightly with exhaustion and hope. The metal letters wait. Each one is a choice. Each one contains centuries. You withdraw your hand. This time, you just watch. The form goes into the press unchanged. The operator pulls the bar. The page prints perfectly, exactly as it was meant to. When you correct nothing, when you simply exist in that moment and then let the return mechanism pull you home through the press's rhythm. something shifts differently. You land back in the copy shop with the sensation of settling, like pieces clicking into place. The world you return to is the one you chose by choosing nothing. Or maybe it's the one you chose by choosing something 5 crossings ago. You're not sure anymore. Your city has changed again, but subtly. The independent bookshops you noticed last time are still there, but they look more permanent now, less precarious. The library has extended hours. You pass a newsstand and see 3 different newspapers, actual printed papers, something you remember declining in the past, but here they're apparently thriving. At home, your bookshelves have reorganized themselves, not drastically, but enough that you notice. Some titles are gone, others have appeared. The collection as a whole feels more intentional, less random, like you've been curating it more carefully across a lifetime of slightly different choices. You search online for Gutenberg Bible errors and find scholarly articles about known imperfections, variations between copies, letters that were set wrong and corrected mid-run. The articles are detailed and confident, citing specific pages and specific letters. You wonder if any of those errors are yours, if scholars 500 years from now are studying your glitches, trying to understand why certain letters appear in variant states in different surviving copies. The copy shop is still there on your next visit, but the heritage corner has changed. Someone has installed proper museum lighting. A small plaque now describes the letterpress's history, allegedly used in the first complete Bible printing run, with a date of August 24th, 1455. The brass tag and scratched instructions are gone, either removed or never there. You're not sure which reality you're in now, but late at night, when you're scrolling through your feeds and see people arguing about what counts as a reliable source, about which version of a text is authoritative, about who gets to decide what's canonical, you feel the weight of that metal type in your fingers. You think about the apprentices in their ink-stained tunics, working through the night to create something that would outlast them. You think about Gutenberg's exhausted hope, his desperate need for this one run to be perfect. You think about how every printed word is a choice someone made, which letter, which spelling, which version of truth to lock into the form and press into paper and send out into the world to be copied and copied and copied. The first printed page was never just about ink and paper. It was about deciding how reality would be recorded, which version would become official, what future generations would believe simply because it was printed, and therefore must be true. You live in the margins of that decision now. Every time a quote goes viral, every time someone says, but the original text says, every time a search engine decides which source is most authoritative, you remember standing in that workshop with your hand on the metal type, feeling the weight of changing a single letter. Your sleep is different now, not worse exactly, but more textured. You dream in 2 columns sometimes, ornate capitals starting each scene. You wake up with the smell of linseed oil in your nose and toner on your fingers. The copy shop glows on the street, open all night, fluorescent and patient. You walk past it some nights without going in. Other nights you stop, press your hand against the window, feel the hum of the machines through the glass. The letterpress is in there, behind its rope, under its museum lighting. You know the rule even if the scratched instructions are gone. You know how to set the clocks, how to time the pull, how to slip through the moment when old and new printing technology sing the same song. You could go back. You could change everything or nothing. You could break the world into infinite versions or carefully stitch it back into one. Instead, you walk home through streets that might have different books in different windows, where people might quote different verses with different confidence, where the canon shifts like sand while pretending to be stone. You live with what you've done, and what you've left undone. You carry the memory of cold metal type, candlelight on exhausted faces, the thunderous slam of the press making truth reproducible. The world is printed now, letter by letter, choice by choice. And you've been there, in the moment of its printing, with your hand on the handle and the weight of centuries waiting to be pulled into existence. You live with what you've done and what you've left undone. You carry the memory of cold metal type, candlelight on exhausted faces, the thunderous slam of the press making truth reproducible. The world is printed now, letter by letter, choice by choice, and you've been there, in the moment of its printing, with your hand on the handle and the weight of centuries waiting to be pulled into existence. But knowing doesn't make it easier. 3 weeks after your last crossing, you're at a dinner party. Someone from work, casual, the kind of thing you usually avoid but couldn't this time. The conversation turns to books, as it always does eventually, and someone mentions a novel you're certain you've never heard of. They quote a passage, and everyone else nods in recognition, murmuring agreement about how that line changed their life or shaped their thinking, or became a cultural touchstone. You smile and nod too, but your skin prickles cold. You check your phone under the table, searching for the title. It exists. It's won major awards. It's taught in high schools. The author's Wikipedia page shows a career spanning decades, multiple printings, translations into 40 languages. You have no memory of this book existing a month ago. At home that night, you pull books off your shelves at random, checking copyright pages, reading dedications and acknowledgements. Some feel right, the familiar weight of discovering them at a particular bookstore, on a particular afternoon for particular reasons. Others feel like strangers wearing familiar covers. You know you own them. You can see your own handwriting in the margins. But the memory of buying them, reading them, being shaped by them, it's thin, like something copied from a poor photocopy, degraded and uncertain. Your mother calls the next day, and during the conversation she mentions how you were always such a reader as a child, how you used to hoard books under your bed like treasure. This feels true. But then she brings up a specific title, says she found your old copy in her attic, remembers how you read it so many times the spine broke. You have no recollection of this book. You make an excuse to end the call and search for it online. It's a children's classic, apparently, published in 1972, beloved by millions. You order a used copy. When it arrives 3 days later, you open to a random page and start reading. The prose is good, the story is engaging, but it's completely foreign to you. No flutter of recognition, no muscle memory of turning these pages. Either you're losing your mind or you've edited yourself out of sync with your own past. The copy shop starts to feel less like a place you visit and more like a place that visits you. You'll be walking home from the grocery store and suddenly you're standing outside it, bags in hand, no memory of deciding to detour. You'll be trying to fall asleep and you'll hear the hum of those modern printers like they're in the next room, counting down to their completion chimes. One night you wake at 2:47 a.m. with the absolute certainty that someone else has found the letterpress. You can feel it, the way you'd feel a tooth starting to ache or a storm building in the distance. Someone else is pulling the handle, syncing their devices, slipping into Gutenberg's workshop with their own plans for which letters to change. You throw on clothes and run the 6 blocks to the shop. It's raining, that soft urban rain that's more mist than water, haloing the streetlights. The copy shop glows like always, and through the window you can see the employee behind the counter. Different one this time, younger, reading something on a tablet. You go inside, dripping on the linoleum, and the employee barely glances up. You walk straight to the back, past the staff-only sign, into the dim corridor. The heritage corner is empty. The letterpress stands in its pool of museum lighting, rope barrier undisturbed, but you can smell it. Linseed oil, the ghost of candle smoke, the metallic tang of real ink, not toner. Someone was here. Someone just left. You approach the press and see it immediately. A fresh sheet in the bed, still slightly damp. Not the thick historical paper you've been using, but modern copy paper, the cheap kind that comes in reams of 500. The impression on it is faint but visible, a fragment of text in that familiar backward mirror script. You lean close, trying to read it. The letters are too degraded, the impression too light. But you can make out a date in the margin, written in graphite pencil, 1455-08-23. The night before your crossings, the night before the first complete run. Someone else has found an adjacent moment, maybe earlier in the workshop's timeline, maybe a parallel attempt, a different form, a different set of apprentices working different pages. The implications spiral through your mind. If someone else can cross, if someone else is changing letters in that same workshop, then the versions multiply exponentially. Every crossing creates branches, and now there are at least 2 people creating them, possibly more. The official version of printed reality is splintering like a mirror struck with a hammer, each shard reflecting a slightly different world. You pick up the damp sheet, fold it carefully, and slip it into your jacket pocket. Evidence. Proof. Though of what, you're not entirely sure. At home, you try to dry the page carefully, laying it flat between paper towels. The impression is clearer once it's dry, but still maddeningly incomplete. You can make out parts of words, incipium and ominous. Genesis maybe, or another book entirely. The letter forms are similar to what you remember but not identical. A different typeface, a different craftsman's hand. You photograph it, upload the image to a forum dedicated to medieval manuscripts and early printing. You don't explain where you got it, just ask if anyone can identify the typeface, date the impression, confirm whether it's authentic. Within hours, you have responses. The consensus is confused. Several people say it's definitely 15th century type, definitely Gutenberg style, but others point out inconsistencies, letter shapes that don't match known examples, spacing that seems off. One user, an academic specialising in incunabula, says flatly, "This is either an unknown test run or an excellent modern forgery. Where did you acquire it?" You don't answer. You delete your post. But the academic sends you a direct message. "I've seen something like this before. 2 years ago, someone brought a similar fragment to a conference. Same inconsistencies. They wouldn't say where they got it. Are you doing the same thing they were doing?" You stare at the message for 20 minutes before typing, "What thing?" The response takes a day. When it comes, it's careful, hedged with uncertainty. "I don't know exactly, but I've started noticing variations in printed text that shouldn't exist. Not just OCR errors or bad scans, actual variations in physical books and controlled library collections. A word different here, a verse numbered differently there. Nothing that changes meaning dramatically, but enough to make cataloguing difficult. Some of us have started calling it text drift. If you know what's causing it, you need to stop. You want to stop. You decide to stop. You avoid the copy shop for 2 weeks, taking different routes home, going to bed at reasonable hours, forcing yourself into the rhythms of normal life. But the world keeps changing anyway. A coffee shop you've visited weekly for 3 years suddenly has different music playing, a whole genre you don't recognise, apparently popular, apparently influential. The barista you know by name mentions a book club meeting there every Thursday. You've never seen a book club meet there. When you ask how long it's been running, she looks at you strangely and says, "Since we opened? It's like our whole thing." Your younger sister texts you a photo of graffiti she saw downtown, a quote in elaborate script attributed to a philosopher whose name you don't recognise. You search for the name and find a robust Wikipedia entry, scholarly articles, a modest but devoted following. This person apparently influenced multiple social movements, wrote prolifically in the 1960s, coined several terms now used casually in political discourse. You have no memory of this person existing. You check the letterpress forum late one night. A different forum, one dedicated to urban exploration and abandoned places. Someone has posted a thread titled "Copy Shop Time Machines?" It's half joking, but the details are too specific. They describe finding old printing equipment in 24-hour shops across different cities, always cordoned off, always with strange brass tags and scratched instructions. The poster claims they tried it once, ended up somewhere that smelled like old books and smoke, saw people in weird clothes, came back and my apartment had different furniture. Anyone else? The responses are mostly jokes, but 3 people respond seriously, cryptically. One says, "Don't touch the type unless you're ready for your life to be research material instead of a life." Another, "Did you think you were the first? Did you think you'd be the last?" The third just posts a photo, a brass tag identical to the one you remember, but the engraving reads, "Basel, Froben, Erasmus edition." A different printer, a different city, a different moment in printing history. You realise the crossings aren't unique to Gutenberg's workshop. They're everywhere that old printing technology intersects with new. Everywhere the transition from manuscript to mass production left a kind of scar in time that can be reopened. How many people are doing this? How many moments are being edited? You go back to the copy shop on a Tuesday night, late enough that the streets are empty. The same young employee is working, and when you enter, they look up with an expression that might be recognition or might be dread. "You're one of them," they say, not a question. You stop halfway to the back hallway. One of who? The press people. We get a few a month now, more lately. They all have that look, like they're trying to remember something they've forgotten, or forget something they remember. The employee sets down their tablet. "I'm not supposed to let people back there anymore. Company policy, but it doesn't matter. You all find ways, and things keep changing anyway." What kind of things? They gesture vaguely at the walls, the machines, the street outside. Everything? Nothing? I've been working here 2 years, and I swear the machines used to be different models. The company that owns us changed names 3 times, except when I check the records, it's always been the same name. I've got childhood memories of books that don't exist anymore, or exist differently, or never existed. My mum's handwriting looks wrong in old birthday cards. Some days I think I'm losing it. Other days I think everyone's losing it together and just not talking about it. You don't know what to say. The employee laughs, but it's not a happy sound. Go ahead, they say, waving toward the back. Everyone does eventually. Just, if you can, try to keep it subtle. Whatever you're doing back there, try not to make things too different. Some of us are barely holding on to what's real as it is. The heritage corner is exactly as you left it, but also fundamentally different in ways you can't articulate. The letterpress looks older and newer, simultaneously. The brass tag is there, then not there, then there again when you blink. You don't cross, you just stand there, hand on the frame, feeling the potential of it. All those moments branching and rebranching. All those letters being moved and replaced and moved again by hands in different times, reaching toward the same instant. You think about the academic's message, text drift. The idea that reality itself is becoming less stable because too many people are editing the source code. You think about the employee's face, that exhausted attempt to hold on to what's real. You think about Gutenberg in his workshop, exhausted and hopeful, believing he was creating something permanent. Truth made reproducible, information made stable, the word made flesh, made ink, made page, made eternal. Except nothing's eternal when anyone can reach back and change a letter. You leave without crossing. Walk home through streets that might be different tomorrow, past bookshops whose inventories shift like tides. Your apartment still has those stranger books on the shelves, still has your handwriting in margins you don't remember writing. You decide to keep a journal. Physical, handwritten, dated. Every day you'll record what you remember, what seems stable, what's changed. Maybe it won't help. Maybe tomorrow you'll read it and have no memory of writing it. But at least there will be a record, a trail of breadcrumbs through the shifting text of reality. The first entry is simple. My name is, and then you pause, pen hovering, because for just a moment you're not entirely certain. The name comes back, solid and familiar. You write it down, then you write. I have been to Gutenberg's workshop 6 times. I think. The world is different now. I think. I'm going to stop. I think. But even as you write it, you know you're lying. The press is still there. The rule still works. And somewhere in the space between old iron and new machines, between candlelight and fluorescence, between one version of printed truth and another, the workshop waits. Other people are crossing now. Maybe they always were. Maybe you created them by crossing yourself, split off versions of yourself into parallel attempts, and now you're all converging on the same moment from different angles. Or maybe the workshop was always crowded with ghosts from every time, all of us standing shoulder to shoulder to shoulder, invisible to each other, all reaching for the same metal type with the same desperate hope that changing just one letter will finally make everything make sense. You close the journal and set it on your nightstand. Tomorrow you'll wake up, and maybe everything will be different. Or maybe you'll wake up and everything will be the same, which is somehow worse. The knowledge that you could change it, should change it, might have already changed it in a timeline you can't quite remember living. The hum of the city outside your window sounds like printing presses working through the night. Like metal type being set and reset and set again. Like the endless reproduction of reality, one impression at a time, each one slightly different from the last. You close your eyes. In the darkness behind your eyelids, you see the backward letters of the forme, the mirror text waiting to be pressed into truth. You feel the weight of the handle in your palm, hear the countdown of modern printers approaching their completion, smell the convergence of toner and ink and time. The first page of the world is still being printed, and you're still holding the handle, and the press is still waiting, and the letters are still there, ready to be moved or left alone, changed or preserved, lost or found. You sleep eventually and dream in 2 columns. The next story is about to begin. Please relax and enjoy. You're wide awake at 3 a.m. in a hotel room that smells faintly of old carpet and lemon cleaning solution. Jet lag pressing against the back of your eyes like a thumb. Outside, Istanbul rain drifts down in that fine mist that isn't quite commitment, just enough to make the narrow street below your window look like it's been brushed with oil paint. You've tried scrolling through your phone, tried the complimentary tea bags, tried lying perfectly still with your eyes closed, but your body insists it's noon somewhere inside you, and sleep isn't coming. So you pull on yesterday's jeans and a hoodie, and decide to walk it off, because at least the rain will feel like something happening. The streets near your hotel are the kind of narrow that makes you wonder how delivery trucks manage. All uneven cobblestones and shuttered shops with metal grates pulled down for the night. You pass a cat sitting in a doorway, completely dry under an awning, watching you with the patient contempt of something that belongs here while you clearly don't. The rain mists your face, and you don't bother pulling up your hood. Somewhere a few blocks over, you can hear the distant white noise of traffic on a bigger road. But here it's just your footsteps and the occasional drip from a gutter. Then you turn a corner and there's a banner stretched across a narrow building's facade. The kind of temporary fabric sign that snaps in the wind. The Last Days of Constantinople, in English and Turkish, with a small Byzantine double-headed eagle logo and an arrow pointing to a door that's still, improbably open despite the hour. The building is one of those renovated Ottoman-era things, all cream-coloured stone and narrow windows, with a wooden door propped open and a small placard that says the museum keeps erratic hours during the exhibit's final week. You push through and find yourself in a tiny lobby, with a bored security guard who barely glances up from his phone, just waves you toward a dark corridor like he's seen stranger things than a soaked tourist at 3:30 in the morning. You pay the entrance fee with crumpled lira notes and head in, and the air changes immediately. Cooler, drier, with that particular hush that museums have, like the building is holding its breath. The halls are narrow and the lighting is that careful dim gold that makes you feel like you're walking through amber. You drift past glass cases full of Byzantine coins and fragments of mosaics, past icons with flaking gold leaf and cracked wooden panels showing saints with enormous eyes. There's no one else here, just you and the echoing click of your sneakers on old tile and the distant hum of climate control. The rooms open one into another in a maze that doesn't quite make sense architecturally, like the building has been renovated too many times and the floors don't line up anymore. You pass a case of chainmail and another of ceramic bowls, and then you turn into a room that stops you cold. The floor glows. It's a huge lit map of old Constantinople, maybe 15 feet across, set into the floor itself with the walls and gates outlined in soft gold LEDs that pulse very faintly, like a heartbeat. The Theodosian walls trace their triple line along the western edge. The Golden Horn curves around the north. The Bosphorus shimmers on the eastern side in tiny blue lights. Churches are marked with crosses, gates with archways, neighbourhoods with their Greek names in small print. You can see Hagia Sophia, the Hippodrome, the harbours, the cisterns. It's beautiful in a stark, fragile way, like looking at an X-ray of something that used to be alive. At the edge of the map, sitting on a small pedestal, there's a glass case holding a blackened bronze cannonball the size of a basketball, its surface pitted and scarred. The placard reads, 1453, from Urban's Bombard, recovered from the walls near the gate of St. Romanus. You crouch down to look at it, and the metal looks almost organic up close, like it's been digested by time. On the side of the map table, mounted flush with the floor's edge, there's a brass dial the size of a dinner plate, ringed with dates. Most of them are worn smooth from handling, but one setting is rubbed nearly to nothing, the numbers barely visible. 29th May 1453. You reach out and touch the dial and feel a faint static tingle, like touching an old TV screen. That's when you notice the message scratched into the brass rim of the dial. It's not part of the original design. Someone carved it in later, shaky modern letters dug into the metal with something sharp, maybe a key or a pocket knife. You have to tilt your head to read it in the dim light. Dial to 29 May 1453. Set ut Kebel 03 War. Constantinople. 040. Wait for both calls. You blink at it, trying to pass what that means. UTC Pel 03 is the time zone, Istanbul's time zone technically, though it would have been called Constantinople back then. The old city's time. You pull out your phone and check. It's 03:47 local time, and your phone happily offers to switch to UTC Pel 03 if you want, the modern echo of that old longitude. Your thumb hovers over the setting, but you don't change it yet. You look back at the dial and notice there's more text, smaller, almost illegible, carved below the first line. At 04 Sios. When church bells and call to prayer overlap, put your palm on the cannonball and don't flinch. You read it twice, then a third time. It's the kind of thing that would be a joke, except it's carved into museum property with what must have been serious effort, and the brass around the words is scratched and worn like someone has touched this spot over and over. You look around the room, still empty, just you and the glowing map and the HVAC humming somewhere in the walls. The rain outside has gone quieter. You can hear your own breathing. You sit down on the edge of the map, careful not to step on the glowing streets, and pull your phone back out. It's 2:51. 9 minutes until 04:07. You don't know what you're waiting for exactly, but your heart is doing something interesting in your chest. A little flutter that feels less like fear and more like the moment before you jump into cold water. You change your phone's time zone setting to UTC +003, Constantinople. It's a drop-down option, nestled between other historical city names, and the time stays the same but the label changes, and something about that feels significant in a way you can't articulate. The museum is so quiet you can hear the clock on the far wall ticking. You realise you're holding your breath. At 03:56 you hear it for the first time. A muezzin's voice, faint and distant, barely audible through the old walls. It's not a full call to prayer, just someone practicing or testing a microphone somewhere in the city outside, and it fades almost immediately. But it's enough to make you stand up and move to the glass case with the cannonball. The lid isn't fully sealed. There's a gap where the glass doesn't quite meet the base, just wide enough that you could reach in if you really wanted to. You rest your hand on the edge of the case and feel the cold of the glass, and through the gap, the faint dusty chill radiating off the cannonball itself. Your palm hovers an inch above its surface. At 03:59, the exhibit speakers crackle to life. You hadn't even noticed them, small and hidden in the ceiling corners, and a sound fills the room. Church bells, recorded, Byzantine in rhythm, overlapping in that strange pattern that Eastern Orthodox bells have, not quite melodic, more like a conversation between different tones. The sound is tinny through the old speakers, but it fills the space, and your hand starts to shake slightly above the cannonball. You're waiting for something you don't understand, and you're not sure if you believe in it, but you're waiting anyway. At exactly 04, two things happen at once. The exhibit's bells reach a crescendo, all the tones ringing together, and from outside, bleeding through the walls, you hear the real call to prayer begin. Allahu Akbar, rich and deep and live. A voice from a minaret somewhere in the actual city. Not a recording, but the real thing happening in real time. For a few seconds, the two sounds braid together. The recorded Christian bells and the live Muslim call to prayer, overlapping in a way that shouldn't work but does, and in that overlap you press your palm down hard onto the cannonball's surface, whispering without knowing why. Pudding Lane of this world, not here, but the rule is the walls. The cannonball is ice cold and then it's burning hot, and the map's gold LEDs flare so bright you have to close your eyes. You feel the floor tilt under you, or maybe you're tilting, and the neat flat map is rising up. Streets becoming three-dimensional, alleys and houses and walls growing vertical around you like the whole thing is unfolding into real space. For a heartbeat you're standing in a glowing wireframe city, all light and geometry, and you can see through the walls to the courtyards and cisterns and crypts below. Then the wireframe fills in. Stone, wood, smoke, rain, cold air slamming into your lungs. Your feet hit wet stone hard enough to jar your knees and you stagger forward, hands out catching yourself on a low parapet wall. When you open your eyes, you're standing on the Theodosian walls of Constantinople, and it's the night of May 28th bleeding into the morning of May 29th, 1453, and the city is in its last hours. The rain is real rain now, cold and steady, soaking through your hoodie in seconds. The stone under your feet is slick and ancient, worn smooth by centuries of boots and sandals and bare feet. You're on a wall walk, a wide pathway running along the top of the inner wall, with a parapet on your left looking out toward the Ottoman siege lines, and a drop on your right down into the city itself. Torches burn in iron sconces every 20 feet or so, their flames guttering in the wind and rain, casting wild shadows. Below you, down the slope of the city, you can see the dark shapes of houses and churches clustered together, narrow streets winding between them, and further down the gleam of water, the Golden Horn or maybe the Marmara, you can't tell from here. And beyond the walls, Stretching into the darkness, a sea of campfires. Thousands of them, tens of thousands. The Ottoman army waiting. Armoured men move past you on the wall walk, their footsteps heavy and purposeful. They wear a mix of gear, some in full plate with surcoats bearing crosses or family emblems, others in chainmail and leather, a few in just padded gambesons soaked through with rain. They carry crossbows, arquebuses, pikes, swords. They don't look at you. You stand pressed against the parapet as a group of them trudges past, adjusting their weapons, murmuring to each other in Greek and Latin and Italian, and none of them react to your presence at all. You're a ghost here, or maybe they're the ghosts and you're the one out of time. Either way, you're invisible to them, and that should be comforting, but it's not. It just makes you feel untethered, like you could blow away with the smoke. A priest comes down the wall walk carrying an icon, a wooden panel showing the Virgin Mary with enormous dark eyes, the gold leaf around her head flickering in the torchlight. Men reach out to touch it as he passes, crossing themselves, kissing their fingers. You catch a glimpse of their faces in the firelight. Exhaustion, fear, faith, resignation, all mixed together. These are men who know what's coming. They've been on these walls for weeks, maybe months, watching the Ottoman cannons hammer the stone, beating back assault after assault, waiting for relief that hasn't come. They're still here because there's nowhere else to be, because this is their city and these are their walls, and if they fall, then everything falls. You feel the weight of that in the air, thick as the smoke. Far below, outside the walls, you can see the shape of something massive in the darkness. Urban's great bombard, the cannon that's been systematically destroying the fortifications for weeks. Even from here you can see the crack in the wall nearby, a jagged line where the stones have been pounded into rubble and hasty repairs. That's where they'll come through, probably. That's where the wall is weakest. You know this from history books and museum placards, but standing here in the rain with the smell of smoke and wet stone and unwashed bodies, it hits different. This isn't a map or a timeline. This is real stone under real boots, and somewhere out there in the dark, real men are preparing to kill these real men you're standing next to. The sky is still dark, but there's a thinness to it in the east, a suggestion of grey that means dawn is maybe an hour away. This is the hour when night is most tired and fear is most awake, when the body wants to sleep but the mind won't let it. You can feel it in the men on the walls, the way they move with a kind of brittle energy, too alert, too sharp. Someone laughs nearby and it sounds wrong, too high. A man vomits over the parapet and his friends don't comment, just shift away slightly to give him space. You drift along the wall walk, not sure where you're going, just moving because standing still feels impossible. You pass a watchtower, a square stone structure rising another 20 feet above the wall, with a signal fire smouldering in an iron brazier at its top. A soldier is feeding it carefully, adding small pieces of wood to keep it burning steady but not too bright. The fire is ready to flare if a breach comes, to send a signal to other towers along the walls. You count 3 more towers like it in your line of sight, each with its own small fire, a chain of lights stretching into the darkness. Something about them catches in your mind, a hook you can't quite feel yet. Messengers move along the wall walk, men in lighter gear who can run, carrying word from tower to tower, gate to gate. You catch fragments of what they're saying as they pass. New assault at dawn, relief fleet seen off Lesbos, emperor at the gate of St. Romanus. No word from the Venetians. The rumours contradict each other. No one seems sure of anything except that something is coming, something final. Through an arrow slit in the wall you glimpse the harbour chain stretched across the Golden Horn, the massive links glinting faintly in the pre-dawn light. Some men swear it will hold, that the Ottomans can't get ships past it into the inner harbour. Others mutter that the Ottomans have already dragged ships overland, bypassing the chain entirely. No one really knows, or maybe everyone knows, but no one wants to say it out loud. Inside the city, church bells are ringing in uneven patterns, some steady and rhythmic, others wild and desperate. You can hear chanting from the direction of Hagia Sophia, voices rising and falling in Byzantine liturgy, hundreds or thousands of people packed into the great church praying for deliverance. The sound mixes with the distant rhythm of Ottoman drums and horns, a low percussion that seems to come from everywhere at once, the sound of an army breathing. You understand, standing here in the rain with torch smoke in your lungs and stone under your feet, that this is the last night of Constantinople as it knows itself. Tomorrow, today, in a few hours, it will be something else. It will have a different name. Different prayers will echo from different towers. Different languages will fill the streets. And everyone on these walls knows it, even if they won't say it. You pause by another signal fire tower, taller than the first. Its brazier fed by 2 soldiers who work in silence, their faces blank with exhaustion. The fire burns steady, oil-fed, ready to flare, and that's when it clicks in your mind, like a memory that's been there all along, but you're only just noticing it. The way back. The return rule. You don't hear it or read it. You just know it, suddenly and completely, the way you sometimes know things in dreams. To return to the museum, you have to find a signal fire tower still burning along the walls. You have to snuff the beacon out with your bare hands, smearing ash and oil on your skin at the exact instant the first Ottoman soldiers force a gate somewhere along the wall system. Not before, not after, the exact moment. You have to time yourself with a catastrophe you've only ever seen summarised in a museum placard, and if you miss it you don't know what happens. Maybe you're stuck here, maybe you die here, maybe you just fade like smoke, and your palm, the one that pressed down on the cannonball, tingles as if to confirm it. That hand will have to burn to get you home. You feel the deeper cost humming underneath that simple rule, something you sense more than understand. Each time you cross, each time you ride the smoke back to the museum, something changes. Not here, not in 1453, in your world, in your present. The way your world remembers this night, the way it draws lines between east and west, the way it tells the story of empires and borders and who belongs where, all of that becomes a little more fluid, a little more uncertain. You can feel it like a pressure in your chest. Maps will redraw themselves in subtle ways. Textbooks will use different language. Cities will shift in how they're categorized, and you'll be one of the only people who remembers it being different. That's the trade. You get to witness history's hinge moment from the inside, but every time you come back, the present reshapes itself around what you've seen, and the line between east and west slides a little further under your feet. The temptation is enormous. You're standing on the walls of Constantinople on the last night of the Byzantine Empire, watching the thing that every history class reduces to a date and a bullet point. You can see exactly how it happens. You can watch the moment a civilization falls and another rises. You can stand in the gap where the story pivots. But the cost is that your own world's understanding of East and West, the borders, the definitions, the assumptions about who is what and where things belong, will start to blur and shift and rewrite themselves, and you'll have to live in whatever version settles. Dawn is bleeding into the sky now. Grey light spreading like a stain. The chanting from Hagia Sophia gets louder, more desperate. The Ottoman drums are closer, or maybe just clearer now that you can see the campfires below. You can make out figures moving between the fires, thousands of soldiers preparing, and then you hear it. The cannons. The roar is so deep it's less a sound and more a physical presence, a pressure wave that travels through the stone under your feet before it reaches your ears. The whole wall shudders. Men shout and grab the parapets for balance. Somewhere down the line you hear the crash of stone hitting stone, the sound of the wall taking another hit, and the defenders surge toward that section with ladders and rubble and timber to shore it up. The assault starts as the grey light turns to pale gold. You see the first wave coming. Thousands of men running at the walls with ladders and shields, roaring as they come. Arrows fall like black rain. Defenders lean over the parapets to hurl stones and burning pitch, and the screaming starts, the sound of men dying in ways that don't make it into history books. You stand by your chosen signal tower, the one with the tall brazier still burning hot, and you watch. You're waiting for the moment the gate fails, the moment the walls give way, and you have no idea how you'll know when it happens because everything is chaos and smoke and sound, but you're waiting anyway, hands ready. The first assault breaks against the walls like a wave against a cliff. The defenders beat them back with crossbow bolts and boiling oil and sheer desperate strength, and the Ottomans retreat, leaving bodies at the base of the walls. There's a lull. Men on the walls slump against the stone, gasping, and someone passes around a wineskin. Then the drums start again, and another wave comes, and another. You lose count. Time stops being linear and becomes something circular and endless, just assault and repulse, until you can't remember what it's like to not hear screaming. You move to the tower's base and put your hands near the brazier, feeling the heat. The fire is fed by oil-soaked wood and burns with a greasy smoke that makes your eyes water. You practice reaching toward it, pulling back, reaching again. You're going to have to plunge your hands into that fire and hold them there long enough to snuff it out, and the thought makes your stomach twist. But the alternative is staying here, and you can't stay here. You're not part of this. You're a tourist with a hoodie and a smartphone, and you need to get back before something in you breaks. A horn blast sounds from somewhere down the wall, sharp and urgent. Men start shouting in Greek, "They're in! They're through!" And everyone surges in that direction, soldiers running past you with weapons raised. But then the shouting changes tone, becomes relieved, and you realise it's a false alarm. Another assault beaten back at the last second. Another near miss. Your hands are shaking. You ball them into fists and try to breathe steadily. Your timing has to be perfect. If you snuff the fire too early, nothing happens and you're stranded. Too late, and you don't know. Maybe the moment passes and the door closes. It has to be exact. The instant the gate gives way, the instant the city's defences truly fail. The sun is fully up now, burning through the smoke and rain, and you can see everything too clearly. The faces of the defenders, haggard and grey. The bodies piled at the base of the walls, the Ottoman banners getting closer with each wave. And then, finally, you see it. Down the line, maybe 200 yards away, at one of the gates near the section of wall that's been pounded to rubble. The gate gives. You don't hear it so much as feel it. A change in the quality of the shouting, a ripple of panic that moves along the wall like a shockwave. Men are running toward the breach and away from it at the same time, and you see the Ottoman soldiers pouring through, a flood of them, banners and blades and voices raised in triumph. The defenders are falling back, fighting step by step, but they're falling back. The wall has broken. The city has an hour left, maybe less. You plunge your hands into the brazier. The heat is immediate and enormous, searing up your forearms, and you grab the burning wood and oil-soaked cloth and force it down, smothering the flame with your palms and fingers, holding on even as every nerve screams at you to let go. The fire fights you, flaring between your fingers, but you press harder, and the smoke thickens, black and acrid, pouring up into your face. You can't breathe, you can't see. The sound of the breach is fading, being replaced by something else, a hiss, a mechanical hum, and the smoke is changing, becoming thinner, cooler, less like burning wood and more like recycled air. You hold on until the fire is completely dead, just ash and oil on your skin, and then the smoke pulls you upward like a hand around your chest, and you're rising through it, up and up, until you slam back down onto cold tile floor. You're in the museum, the exhibit room. The glowing map is just LEDs again, flat and harmless. The cannonball sits in its glass case, cold and inert. Your hands are covered in black ash and they hurt like hell, blistered and raw. But when you look at them in the dim museum light, they're already starting to fade. The burns healing in fast forward like you're watching time-lapse footage. In 10 seconds, they're pink and tender. In 30 seconds, they're almost normal, just a faint tingle. You sit on the floor next to the map, breathing hard, smelling smoke that isn't there, and you realise you're crying a little. Not from pain, but from something else you don't have words for. The museum is the same. The guard is still at his post, dozing. The HVAC is still humming. But something feels off, and it takes you a few minutes of sitting there in the dark to figure out what it is. The placard next to the map has changed. Not drastically, the date is still 1453, the event is still the same, but the language is different. It says, Constantinople's integration into the Middle World, instead of the fall of the Eastern Roman Empire. You read it 3 times. Integration, not fall, not conquest, integration. Like it's describing a merger instead of a siege. You stand up and walk to the lobby, legs shaky, and there's a large world map on the wall there. The kind that shows modern borders in bright colours. You stare at it. The borders are wrong. Not wildly wrong, not unrecognisable, but shifted. Some countries you know are split differently. A region near the Black Sea is labelled with a name you've never seen. The line between Europe and Asia, usually drawn so firmly, is blurred here, marked with a dotted line and note about disputed classifications. You pull out your phone and open a map app and it's the same. The borders are slightly different. The cultural overlays don't match what you remember. You search for Fall of Constantinople, and the results talk about transition periods and cultural blending and the gradual shift of power, using language that feels both right and wrong at the same time. You go back to your hotel as the real dawn breaks, the rain finally stopping, and you lie on the bed with your phone in your hand, scrolling through search results that feel like they're from a parallel timeline. The history is the same in broad strokes, but the framing is different, the emphasis shifted. Certain conflicts you remember learning about in school are described differently or didn't happen at all. Other tensions that seem new are treated as centuries old. Language demographics in certain regions don't match your memory. You're not sure if you're going crazy, or if this is what the rule meant when it said each crossing rewrites how your world remembers empires and borders. You sleep for a few hours and wake up at noon, and the first thing you do is check the museum's hours. It's open until midnight, part of some special late-night program for the exhibit's final week. You tell yourself you're not going back. You tell yourself once was enough, that you saw what you needed to see, that messing with history or time or whatever that was is a bad idea. You tell yourself this while putting on your shoes, while walking back through the streets, while pushing through the museum door and paying the entrance fee again, while standing in front of the glowing map and the brass dial, your hand hovering over it. The rule is the same. The scratched message hasn't changed. Dial to 29, May 1453. Set your phone to UTC +03, Douros, Constantinople. Wait for 04 Funziers when the church bells and call to prayer overlap, palm on the cannonball. You don't understand why you're doing this. Or maybe you do understand and that's worse. You want to see it again. You want to be there again, standing on the walls at the hinge of history, feeling the weight of the moment. And maybe, somewhere deeper, you want to see how much you can shift the present, how far the borders can move before they lock into something unrecognizable. You cross again that night, and the night after. Each time the process is the same. The dial, the time zone, the overlapping bells and call to prayer, the cannonball burning cold then hot, the map rising into real space around you. But each crossing drops you into slightly different moments of that same endless night and morning. One time you land near the harbour gates, watching men trying to escape by boat while others try to stop them, arguments breaking into fights. Another time you're on a section of wall near Hagia Sophia, and you can hear the liturgy clearly, thousands of voices singing in Greek, and then the moment when the singing stops and the screaming starts as soldiers burst through the doors. Another time you're in the streets themselves, invisible among the chaos, watching civilians flee and soldiers advance, and the moment when one thing becomes another thing, when Byzantine Constantinople becomes Ottoman Constantiniye. Each time you find a signal tower. Each time you wait for the breach. Each time you burn your hands snuffing the beacon and ride the smoke back to the museum. And each time the present is different when you return. Small changes that accumulate. Your hotel's Wi-Fi login page is in 3 languages instead of 2. The street signs outside have additional scripts. The world map in the museum lobby shows different borders every time, like it's being redrawn by a committee that can't agree. Your search results on your phone shift. Sometimes East and West are treated as meaningful categories, sometimes as outdated colonial frameworks, sometimes as actively harmful divisions. School curricula referenced in articles emphasize different empires. Cities are recategorized in travel guides. Religious architecture is described with different assumptions about who built what and why. Languages acquire or lose official status in regions you thought you knew. After the 5th crossing, you notice something else. You're starting to lose your grip on what the original version was. You remember that borders were different, that certain conflicts existed or didn't exist, that languages were more or less prominent in certain places, but the specifics are getting fuzzy. It's like trying to remember a dream after you've been awake for an hour. You know it was different, but you can't quite say how. Your own memories are adapting to match the new present, or maybe the new present is overwriting your memories, and you're not sure if there's a difference. On the 6th night, you stand in the exhibit room and the brass dial resists when you try to turn it. Not locked, just stiff, like something is pushing back. The cannonball in its case feels warm when you put your hand near it, even through the glass. The LEDs on the floor map flicker in patterns that don't match the street layout, like they're trying to show multiple versions of the city at once. You realise you're at some kind of threshold. One more crossing might lock things into place, might settle your world into a version of history that you'll have to live with whether you like it or not. Or it might break something fundamental, leave the borders so unstable that the categories stop making sense entirely. You turn the dial anyway. You set your phone to UTC +03 Dshro, Constantinople, a time zone that feels less real every time you select it. You wait for 04 call, for the bells and the call to prayer, and when they overlap you press your palm to the cannonball and fall through the map one more time. This crossing is different. The walls are the same but thinner, like you're seeing through them to other versions of themselves. Older, newer, never built, still standing. The defenders are there but translucent, and you can see Ottoman soldiers in the same space, and behind them other armies from other times, all layered on top of each other. The signal fires burn in multiple colours at once. You understand, in a way that's more feeling than thought, that you're seeing all the versions of this moment that your crossings have created, all the different ways it could have been remembered and recorded and mythologized, all existing simultaneously, because you've made them all equally real. You find a signal tower, the same one you've used before, you think, though it's hard to tell, and you wait. The breach happens in slow motion and fast forward at once, gates giving way in multiple directions, time losing its shape. You plunge your hands into the brazier and the fire is every colour and no colour, and the smoke that rises is thick enough to drown in. You hold on and ride it back, and when you land on the museum floor this time, you land hard enough to knock the breath out of you. The museum is different, not drastically, but unmistakably. The exhibit placard now just says, Constantinople, Istanbul, 1453, a city between worlds. The map in the lobby shows borders that look more like gradients than lines, regions marked with multiple names and multiple scripts. You pull out your phone, and the map app takes a long time to load, like it's trying to reconcile incompatible data, and when it finally does, the borders are soft and strange, some of them barely there at all. You search for information about East and West, and the results are a mess of contradictory frameworks, some treating them as distinct civilizations, others as arbitrary colonial categories, others as useful but fluid descriptors, all with citations and academic backing. You don't know which version is true because they all seem true now, all equally valid and invalid at the same time. You leave the museum and walk back to your hotel through streets that feel familiar and foreign at once. The rain has started again, and you let it soak you. In the distance you hear church bells from one direction, and the call to prayer from another, and for a moment they overlap, and your palm tingles with ghost heat from a cannonball that's either in a museum case or at the base of broken walls, 572 years ago, depending on how you count. You live in a world now where the line between East and West is not fixed, where borders are more like suggestions, where the story of empires and conflicts and who belongs where depends on which version of history you're inhabiting at any given moment. You're one of the only people who remembers it being more certain, more clear-cut, and even that memory is fading. You know, somewhere in the back of your mind where the rules live, that the museum's brass dial and glowing map and blackened cannonball are still there, still waiting. That someone else might find the scratched message and follow the instructions and fall through into 1453, onto walls that are both ancient history and living present. That each crossing rewrites a little more, shifts the borders a little further, makes the categories a little more unstable, and you know that you could go back, that the door isn't closed, that 04 soap comes every night and the bells and call to prayer overlap if you listen for them. But you also know that your own sense of East and West, of where things belong and how history is supposed to flow, is already too far gone to trust. You lie in your hotel bed as dawn comes for real, jet lag still pressing behind your eyes, and every time you close your eyes, you see torch smoke and hear Byzantine chanting mixed with Ottoman drums. You see defenders on walls that might or might not have fallen the way you remember. You see a city in its last hours as one thing, and its first hours as another, and the moment between them that you've walked through so many times, it's worn a groove in reality itself. You live now in a world where that moment never fully resolved, where the borders it created are still moving, still being negotiated, still sliding under your feet whenever you stand still long enough to notice. And on rainy nights, when you hear bells and prayers overlapping from somewhere in the distance, whether real or recorded or remembered, you feel stone under your boots and smoke in your lungs, and you know that you helped make this world, this version, whatever version it is now. You know that the line between East and West is not something fixed in the past, but something you've walked through and touched and burned your hands on, and it will never be solid. Again. The next story is about to begin. Please relax and enjoy. You're on a desert road trip at night. Highway empty, radio low, rain pattering on the windshield as a storm rolls in over distant mesas. The dotted lines blur past in the darkness, and the only other light comes from your dashboard and the occasional distant ranch house set back from the road. You've been driving for hours, caffeine wearing thin, eyes starting to ache from the monotony of asphalt and painted stripes. That's when you see it. A cracked neon sign flickering against the dark sky. Half the letters dead or dying. Nuclear History Museum, it claims, though the clear flickers in and out so it reads new. History, most of the time. Behind it, you can make out chain link fencing and warning signs catching your headlights. Some kind of old test range, probably. The kind of place that's been sitting empty since the Cold War ended. Quietly radioactive, quietly forgotten. You weren't planning to stop, but your bladder has other ideas, and there's something magnetic about that dying neon in the rain. Curiosity too, maybe. You've always had a thing for abandoned Cold War sites, for the aesthetic of duck and cover and peaceful atoms propaganda. So you signal, pointlessly, since there's no one else on the road, and pull into the gravel lot. The museum is smaller than you expected. Just a squat concrete building that looks like it was built in the 50s and hasn't been updated since. Through the glass door you can see a clerk slumped behind a desk, lit by the blue glow of a phone screen. The rain picks up as you jog toward the entrance, fat drops that smell like creosote and dust. Inside the air is stale and smells like old carpet and something chemical you can't quite place. The clerk looks up, blinks at you like you've materialised from another dimension, then waves vaguely toward the back. Bathrooms past the dioramas, he mumbles, already looking back down at his phone. He doesn't ask for admission, doesn't offer a brochure. You get the sense you're the first visitor he's seen in days, maybe weeks. You make your way past dusty display cases filled with yellowed newspapers, atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima, and faded posters showing smiling families standing next to cooling towers. Atoms for peace, one proclaims. Nuclear energy, clean, safe, economical, promises another. The colours sun-bleached to pastels. There's a diorama of a 50s suburban home with a tiny nuclear power plant in the background. The little plastic people frozen in eternal optimism. The bathroom is exactly as depressing as you'd expect. Afterwards you wander back through the exhibits, not quite ready to get back in the car. The storm is really howling now, thunder rolling across the roof, rain drumming harder. You pause at a display of old warning signs under glass. Radiation trefoils in various styles. Danger. Radiation area. Stenciled in stern government fonts. There's something hypnotic about them. The way they try to make the invisible visible. The incomprehensible comprehensible. That's when you notice the side door. It's set into the far wall, painted the same industrial beige as everything else. But there's a handmade sign taped to it. Early nuclear research. Closed exhibit. The sign looks old, the tape yellowed and peeling. But when you try the handle, just out of curiosity, just to see, it turns. The door swings open on hinges that don't squeak, opening onto darkness that smells like concrete and old film stock and something else, something metallic and sharp. You glance back at the clerk. He hasn't moved, still absorbed in his phone, and somehow you know he won't care if you explore. You step through. Your phone's flashlight reveals a narrow room, more like a corridor really, running perpendicular to the main museum. The walls are raw concrete, not painted or finished, and your footsteps echo in a way that suggests the space goes back farther than you can see. There are shelves along one wall holding film canisters and old equipment, oscilloscopes, meters, devices you can't name. Everything is covered in a fine layer of dust that your passage disturbs into lazy swirls. At the far end, maybe 20 feet in, the flashlight beam catches something. A narrow horizontal slit in the wall, like an observation window about chest height. Below it, a concrete ledge, and beside it, you move closer. A glass case, not dusty like everything else, containing what looks like an old Geiger counter. The needle is moving, twitching in irregular jumps, and you can hear it. A faint arrhythmic clicking that fills the silence between thunderclaps. Click, 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 like it's measuring something still after all these years. Next to the case, a metal projector stand, professional looking, probably military surplus. A film reel sits on it, and even in the flashlight beam you can make out the label typed on yellowed paper and sealed under brittle tape. Trinity Test, 16 July 1945. Your pulse quickens. Trinity, the first atomic bomb. The test in New Mexico that preceded Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the moment when theoretical physics became world-ending fire. You've seen footage before, everyone has, that churning mushroom cloud, the desert light brighter than 1,000 suns. But this looks like an original reel, or a very old copy. The kind of thing that should be in an archive, not sitting in a back room of a forgotten roadside museum. You step closer to the observation slit, running your hand along the concrete ledge below it. Your fingers catch on something. Grooves, deliberate marks. You angle your phone light down and feel your breath stop. Someone has scratched words into the concrete, carved deep with something sharp. The letters are rough but clear. Set 1945 or 7 to 16. 45 SEC. Click, flash, beep. Go, open. You read it again. Then a third time. Your hand is still resting on the concrete, and you notice it's warm. Warmer than it should be in this cool, underground-feeling space. The Geiger counter clicks behind you, a little louder now like it's paying attention. Set 1945 as 07 to 16, the date of the Trinity test. 45 SEC, 45 seconds, click flash beep, open. Click from the Geiger counter, flash from the film, and beep from. You look down at your phone, still glowing in your hand, and something slots into place in your mind like a key finding a lock. The idea is absurd, completely insane. But standing here in the dark with the storm raging outside and the Geiger counter clicking and those words carved into concrete that feels warm like living skin, you can't shake it. The rule is right there, etched in stone. If you change your phone's date to July 16th, 1945, if you set a 45-second timer, if you start the film reel so that the flash of the detonation, the loudest click from the Geiger counter, and your timer's final beep will synchronize, all land on the same heartbeat, then the concrete in front of you will open, will turn to glass, will let you step through into the real Trinity control shelter, seconds before the first atomic bomb detonates. The Geiger counter gives a sharp click, almost like confirmation. Thunder shakes the building. You tell yourself you're being ridiculous, that you've been driving too long, that the isolation and the weird atmosphere of this place are getting to you. But your fingers are already moving, opening your phone's settings, scrolling down to date and time, toggling off set automatically. The date picker appears. You scroll backwards, watching the months and years blur past. 2024, 2023, 2020, 2010, 2000, 1990. The numbers get smaller and smaller. 1950, 1949, 1948, 1947, 1946, 1945. You stop. July 16. The phone hesitates for a moment, like it's not sure if you're serious. Then the screen flickers and the date at the top changes. July 16th, 1945. Monday. Nothing happens. The room is still dark, still concrete, still dusty. But the Geiger counter's rhythm changes, the clicks coming faster now, more insistent. You open your clock app and set a countdown timer. 00:45. 45 seconds. Your thumb hovers over the start button, but you don't press it yet. The film reel. You move to the projector stand, examining it in your phone light. It's old, but looks functional. Someone's maintained it, or it's built to military durability standards. There's a take-up reel already in place. You carefully lift the film from its reel and begin threading it through the mechanism, following the diagram printed on the projector's side. The film is stiff and crackles faintly as you handle it, and you catch glimpses of the frames as they pass. A steel tower in the desert, cables stretching away, men in lab coats and uniforms, equipment you don't recognize. When the film is threaded, you give the reel a tentative turn by hand. The projector's lens throws a beam of light onto the concrete wall beside the observation slit. There must be a bulb that's still working. The image is grainy, black and white, showing the test tower from a distance. You wind forward slowly, watching the frames tick past. Dawn light. The tower standing alone. Cables. Desert scrub. Then, several feet of film in, a frame that looks brighter, overexposed, like the camera couldn't handle what it was about to see. That's the moment. That's the flash. You rewind carefully, resetting the film to the beginning, and position yourself between the projector and the observation slit. Timer on your phone, 00:45. ready to start. Projector, loaded and ready to play. Geiger counter, clicking irregularly behind you, sometimes soft, sometimes sharp. The scratched words under your fingertips, click flash beep. Open, you practice the motion. Thumb on the timer's start button, other hand reaching for the projector's play mechanism. It's manual, a lever that will release the brake and let the reel turn freely. You'll need to coordinate. Start the timer, start the film, and trust that in 45 seconds the flash will appear on screen exactly when the loudest Geiger click sounds and your timer reaches 0. The margin for error must be impossibly small, fractions of a second. But somehow you feel it in your bones, in the warmth of the concrete under your palm, that if you get it right, something will open, something will change. You take a breath. Outside, the storm intensifies, and you hear what might be hail starting to hit the roof. The clerk in the other room hasn't come to check on you. The museum feels very far away suddenly, like you've walked much farther than 20 feet from that door. Start the countdown, now! Your thumb presses start on the timer, 0.45 begins counting down. Immediately you throw the projector lever and the reel begins to turn, the old mechanism whirring to life, the image blooming on the concrete wall. The frames tick past, tower, cables, desert, dawnlight creeping across the horizon. The Geiger counter clicks behind you, irregular but present, and you watch the timer, 0:40, 0:35, 0:30. The film continues. Men moving around equipment, the tower standing stark against the lightning sky. You can see the bomb itself in some frames, a dark mass at the top of the tower, almost organic looking. The counter clicks, just 25. The Geiger counter's rhythm is changing, the clicks coming faster, building. On screen the frames are getting brighter, the desert's pre-dawn glow intensifying. 15, 10. Your heart is hammering. The clicks are almost continuous now, and you can see it coming on the film, the light changing, the frame beginning to overexpose, everything rushing toward that single moment. Just discs, so fast. The Geiger counter screams, a sharp, piercing click that's louder than all the others, like a hammer striking steel. At the exact same instant, the film explodes into white, a flash so bright it fills the entire frame and spills out into the room, throwing your shadow against the opposite wall, and your timer. Beep. The 3 signals land on top of each other, synchronized perfectly, and for a heartbeat the world holds its breath. Then the concrete in front of you changes, not crumbling, not opening like a door, changing, going transparent, becoming glass, thick and slightly green-tinted like bulletproof observation windows, rippling as if the molecular structure is rearranging itself in front of your eyes. The floor shifts under your feet. The hum of the museum's air conditioning drops away, replaced by a different sound, equipment fans, low voices, radio static. The smell changes. Cigarette smoke, sweat, electrical ozone, hot vacuum tubes. The temperature drops several degrees. The light shifts from your phone's blue-white LED to the warmer, dimmer glow of incandescent bulbs. When the sensation settles and you can focus again, you're no longer in the museum's back room. You're standing in the Trinity control shelter. The space is cramped, much smaller than you expected. Concrete walls, naked bulbs hanging from the ceiling, cables running everywhere underfoot. Benches along the walls, crowded with equipment, radios, switches, meters with needles that twitch and swing. The air is thick with tension and smoke. Several of the men crowded into the space are smoking, and the ventilation is clearly inadequate. There are maybe a dozen people in here, all men, all wearing either military uniforms or rumpled civilian clothes that look like they've been slept in. Some are hunched over equipment, making last-minute adjustments. Others are standing, smoking, staring at the wall where someone has drawn a countdown on a chalkboard. And at the far end, through a thick glass observation slit, the real one, the original, you can see the desert. It's still dark out there, but the sky's beginning to pale, and about 5 miles away, clearly visible against the dawn, stands the test tower, a steel framework rising from the desert floor, skeletal and somehow menacing, with the bomb mounted at its top. Cables run from the tower in all directions like the threads of a web. The brush and scrub of the desert surround it, peaceful and doomed. Someone walks through you. You gasp. It's involuntary, But no one reacts. The man, a physicist in a rumpled shirt with a clipboard, passes right through your position, and you feel a cold shiver run through your whole body, like walking through a cloud of ice water. There's also a buzzing, a vibration at the edge of perception, like you're picking up on the frequency of his nervous system for the moment your bodies overlap. You're a ghost here, present but not, able to see and hear but not interact, not really here at all. Weather's holding, someone is saying, their voice tight with tension. Wind's acceptable, humidity's dropping. Still could be a dud, another voice responds. All this work, all this money, and we might get nothing but a fizzle. Or it could work. Too well, a third voice says quietly. Have you read Teller's numbers on atmospheric ignition? He thinks the odds are... Teller's numbers are theoretical, the second voice cuts in, but there's no confidence in it. We've been over this. The calculations show we're reasonably sure we won't ignite the atmosphere and kill everything on Earth, the first voice says flatly. Reasonably sure, that's what we're betting on. A moment of silence. Someone coughs, someone else flips switches on a panel, and lights change from red to green. You move closer to the chalkboard, drawn to it. The countdown is written there in thick white chalk, numbers descending from T-minus 30 minutes down to 0. Most of the numbers have been erased and rewritten multiple times. You can see the ghost marks underneath, the anxiety and the repeated corrections. But the final number, the 0 at the bottom, is written thick and dark and permanent looking, like someone pressed hard enough to make it real. Beside the countdown are equations, scribbled in different hands. Some you recognise from undergraduate physics, basic kinematics, energy conversions. Others are more complex, symbols and terms you'd need a doctorate to pass. There are names too, initials. RO, Oppenheimer, EF, Fermi, KB, JM. The people who built this bomb, in this room, in these final minutes before they find out if it works. And you understand, suddenly and completely, what the return rule must be. This chalkboard is your anchor. That final 0 is your way back. You'll need to erase it, with your bare hand, with flesh that shouldn't exist in this moment, and rewrite it as your current year. 2024, or 2025, whichever you came from. The chalk dust on your palm, the smudge of years overlapping, will become a bridge. And when the bomb goes off and the shockwave hits this shelter, you'll touch that dust to the observation glass and let it pull you home. But first you have to survive the blast. You have to stand here, in this room, in this moment, and witness what these men are about to unleash. The loudspeaker crackles to life, making you jump. T-minus 15 minutes, a voice announces, flat and mechanical. All stations report ready. The men in the shelter shift, stubbing out cigarettes, checking instruments one last time. One of them, young, maybe late 20s, with dark circles under his eyes, starts laughing, a slightly hysterical edge to it. 15 minutes, he says to no one in particular. In 15 minutes we'll either be heroes or cinders. Or we'll have failed completely, someone else says. Don't forget that option. I'm not sure which I'm hoping for anymore, the young man admits quietly. No one responds to that. What is there to say? You drift around the shelter, observing. The equipment is a mix of cutting-edge and improvised. Military-grade radio sets next to what look like hand-wound coils and breadboarded circuits. Everything has the feel of something built in a hurry, with unlimited funding but limited time. There's a device near the observation slit that you think might be measuring light intensity. Its meter currently reading near 0. Next to it, a seismograph is etched with a steady baseline waiting to record the shockwave. Through the glass, the tower stands dark against the slowly lightening sky. You can see lights moving out in the desert. Vehicles, probably, getting to the last safe positions, or maybe not safe. You remember reading that no one was really sure what safe meant, that the yield estimates varied wildly, that some physicists had calculated scenarios where the desert itself might be set ablaze. T-minus 10 minutes, the loudspeaker announces. Someone near you is praying under his breath. You catch fragments. Thy will be done. Forgive us our trespasses. Another man is scribbling furiously in a notebook. Equations or last thoughts you can't tell. A third is simply staring at the tower, smoking mechanically, ash dropping unnoticed onto his shoes. You move back to the chalkboard. Your hand, translucent, barely there, reaches out toward the final 0. You don't touch it yet, not yet, but you rehearse the motion, palm flat, wiping sideways, smearing the chalk, then writing your year, 2024, you decide, in rough digits. The dust on your palm will be enough. It has to be. -5 minutes. Final safety checks complete. All personnel confirmed at minimum safe distance. 5 minutes. The room has gone almost silent except for the hum of equipment and the sound of breathing. The smoke hangs in the air like a visible manifestation of their collective anxiety. Through the observation slit, the sky is definitely lighter now. You can make out individual shapes in the landscape, the texture of the desert, the way the tower's shadow falls across the sand. You wonder what they're thinking. These men who split the atom, who turned Einstein's equations into a weapon, who are about to find out if they've built a firecracker or a sun. Are they thinking about the war, about ending it, about the lives that might be saved if this works? Or are they thinking about Prometheus, about fire stolen from the gods, about punishments that echo through eternity? T-3 minutes. One of the men turns away from the observation slit, his face pale. "I can't watch," he says. "Someone tell me when it's over." "You'll know," another man says grimly. "Believe me, you'll know." The Geiger counter in the corner, a larger, more sophisticated version of the one in the museum, begins to tick more rapidly. Background radiation rising, maybe, or just the sensitivity ramping up in anticipation. The sound is hypnotic. Click, 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 click. T-2 minutes. You position yourself near the chalkboard, ready. Your heart is pounding so hard you think everyone should be able to hear it, but of course they can't. You're not really here. You're a phantom, a time-displaced consciousness, a glitch in causality that has somehow slipped into the most significant moment of the 20th century. T-1 minute, 60 seconds to 0 time. The countdown begins in earnest now, the voice from the loudspeaker calling out every 10 seconds, 50 seconds, 40 seconds. You reach out and wipe your palm across the chalked 0. The sensation is strange. Your hand meets resistance. The chalk is real against your not-quite-real skin, and dust comes away on your palm, visible and tangible. You've affected something, changed something. The 0 is now a smear, and you quickly draw the numbers. 2, 0, 2, 4. Rough but clear. A different 0, a different ending point. 30 seconds. 20 seconds. The room is completely silent now except for the countdown. No one is speaking, no one is moving. Every eye is fixed on the observation slit, on the tower, on the horizon where the sun will rise in the conventional sense in another hour or so. But in 30 seconds, 20 now, 15, a different kind of sunrise is coming. 10 seconds, 9, 8. The Geiger counter is clicking frantically. The equipment hums. Someone's breathing has become audible, rapid and shallow. The chalk dust on your palm feels warm, alive, vibrating at a frequency you feel in your teeth. 7, 6, 5. Through the glass, the tower stands dark and waiting. The desert is utterly still. Even the wind seems to have stopped, like nature itself is holding its breath. 4, 3, 2. You press your chalk-dusted palm against the observation glass, feeling the cool thickness of it, the way it's designed to protect the people in this room from what's about to happen outside. Your hand leaves a smeared print, 2024, ghosted in chalk dust, a message from a future these men can't imagine. 1. Silence. Complete silence. Not even breathing. The world balanced on the edge of before and after, innocent and experienced, conventional and nuclear. 0. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. You have time to think. It failed. It's a dud. All this tension and fear for... Then the desert explodes into light. It's not like the film. It's not like any footage you've ever seen. It's impossible light. Light that shouldn't exist. Light brighter than anything natural, brighter than the sun, brighter than looking directly into an arc welder. The tower vanishes instantly, not destroyed, but simply erased, vaporized, turned from solid steel into plasma faster than your eye can register. The observation glass goes opaque white, every photon screaming through it, and even through the protective thickness you have to close your eyes, and even with your eyes closed the light is blinding, turning the inside of your eyelids red and then white and then colours that don't have names. The men in the shelter cry out. throwing up their hands, turning away. The light is everywhere, filling everything, drowning the world for what feels like forever but must be only seconds. There is nothing but light, pure, terrible, triumphant light. Then it begins to change, still impossibly bright, but now you can sense colours through your squeezed shut eyelids. White shifting to orange, orange to yellow, yellow to purple, colours mixing and swirling like someone is painting with the palette of creation itself. The light modulates, pulsing, and you risk opening your eyes a crack. Through the observation slit, the desert has been transformed. Where the tower stood, there is now a fireball. That's the only word for it. A sphere of incandescent plasma expanding upward and outward, roiling and churning. It's rising, impossibly fast, climbing into the pre-dawn sky on a column of superheated air and desert sand that's been turned to glass. The colours are like a sunset and a sunrise happening simultaneously, layers of purple and orange and red and white all churning together. It's beautiful. God help you. It's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. And it's growing. The fireball is rising, expanding, and now you can see the characteristic shape forming. The cap at the top, the narrowing column beneath, the spreading base. A mushroom cloud. The mushroom cloud. The first one. The shape that will haunt your civilization's nightmares for the next 80 years and beyond. Then the sound hits. You've been expecting it. Intellectually you know that light travels faster than sound, but nothing prepares you for the reality. It's not a sound. It's a physical force, a compression wave that hits the shelter like a freight train. The concrete shudders. Dust rains from the ceiling. The equipment rattles and jumps, some of it sparking. The observation glass flexes inward, stress patterns appearing in the thick material. Men are thrown to the floor. One of the benches tips over. The chalkboard swings on its mount, and more chalk dust fills the air. The roar goes on, a sustained thunder that makes your entire skeleton vibrate, that you feel in your lungs and your gut and your bones. It's the sound of the desert being torn apart, of the atmosphere being shoved aside, of physics doing things it was never meant to do. It's the sound of humans playing God and discovering that gods are terrifying. And through it all, your hand is pressed against the observation glass, the chalk dust smeared there, the numbers 2024 barely visible through the light and the stress patterns. You feel the shock wave travelling through the glass, through the dust, through the connection between this moment and your own time. The boundaries are blurring. The concrete behind you is starting to shift, becoming less solid, more permeable. The shelter is beginning to fade, the men's voices becoming distant, the equipment's hum dropping away. But before you go, you let yourself watch a moment longer. The mushroom cloud is still rising, vast and terrible and strangely majestic, painting the desert dawn with unnatural colours. The shockwave is racing outward in a visible ring, flattening brush and sending up a wall of dust. The light is finally beginning to fade from unbearable to merely bright, and you can see the desert floor, scorched, blasted, transformed. A circle of destruction centred on where the tower stood, where matter became energy, where the world changed forever. In the shelter, the men are picking themselves up, staring through the observation slit with expressions of awe and horror and pride and fear all mixed together. One of them is crying, another is laughing, a third is vomiting into a corner overcome. They've done it. They've split the atom and unleashed its fire. They've become death, the destroyer of worlds, just like Oppenheimer will famously recall the Bhagavad Gita saying. They've ended one age and begun another, and you're falling away from them. From this moment, the chalk dust on your palm pulling you forward through 79 years, the glass becoming a membrane, the shelter dissolving into highway noise, rain, the hum of air conditioning, the smell of old carpet and dust. You're back in the museum's back room, hand still pressed against the concrete wall beside the observation slit. The projector has run out of film and is clicking rhythmically, the take-up reel spinning empty. The Geiger counter is ticking its irregular rhythm, softer now, calmer. Your phone, still clutched in your other hand, shows your normal date, your normal time, the transition back to automatic settings seamless. But nothing is normal. You stumble back from the wall, breathing hard, your hands shaking. The chalk dust is still there on your palm, visible proof that something happened. Your heart is racing, adrenaline flooding your system, and you feel like you've been hit by that shockwave yourself, rattled, disoriented, fundamentally changed. You look around the back room, it seems different, subtly wrong. The equipment on the shelves is arranged differently than you remember. The film canisters have different labels. The scratched words on the concrete ledge are still there. Set 1945 07 and 16. 45 SEC, click, flash, beep, and open. But they look older now, more worn, like they've been there longer. Your phone buzzes. Notifications. You look down at the screen and feel your stomach drop. The headlines don't make sense. DO announces closure of 3 Midwest reactors following latest safety review. You don't remember there being a safety review. Anniversary of the 1979 Calvert Cliffs incident marked by vigils. Calvert Cliffs? That's not right. 3 Mile Island was the big incident in 1979, wasn't it? You open your news app, scrolling frantically. More strangeness. Debate continues over nuclear power phase-out timeline. Phase-out? When did that become policy? Renewable energy grid reaches 70% of national capacity. 70%? That seems too high. You remember it being around 40%, maybe less. And there. Historians reflect on the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1963. 1963? No. The Cuban Missile Crisis was in 1962, October 1962. You studied it in school. But here, in your phone, in this version of your present, every article and reference says 1963. Every source agrees. The dates have shifted by a year. You put the phone away, hands trembling, and make your way back through the museum. The exhibits have changed too. Where there was a display about nuclear power plants, now there's a section on the Great Nuclear Debate 1970-2025. The maps showing reactor locations are different. Fewer plants in operation, more marked as decommissioned or proposed but never built. The timeline of nuclear development has branched in ways you don't recognise. The clerk is still at his desk, still absorbed in his phone, and he doesn't look up as you pass. He has no idea anything has changed. To him, to everyone in this world, this is how it's always been. The nuclear age has always followed this particular path, with different accidents and different treaties and different choices branching from that first flash in the New Mexico desert. Only you remember it differently. Only you carry the memory of another version, another timeline, another history that's been overwritten by whatever ripples spread out from your presence in that shelter, your chalk dust on that glass. You get back in your car, sitting in the driver's seat with the rain pattering on the windshield, and you pull out your phone again. You start researching, compulsively, trying to map the differences. The major ones you can find. Nuclear power never achieved the same prominence. After a series of incidents in the 70s and 80s, some familiar, some not, public opinion turned against it more sharply. Fewer plants were built, more were shut down early. The energy grid shifted harder toward renewables and natural gas. The Cold War played out differently. Not radically, still a long standoff, still arms races and proxy wars, but the specific crises and near misses have shifted. Some you remember are gone. Others you've never heard of have taken their place. International treaties have different names, different dates, different signatories. The nuclear powers are mostly the same, but the path they took to get there, the accidents that shaped public policy, the moments of crisis, it's all slightly askew, it's subtle. To anyone living in this version of the present, it would all make perfect sense, a logical progression from Trinity to now. But to you, carrying memories from a different branch, it's profoundly unsettling. You've tilted something, changed something. The nuclear age you grew up learning about is gone, replaced by this one, and you're the only person who knows the difference. You start the car and pull back onto the highway, windshield wipers beating against the rain. You drive for an hour before you can process what happened. 2 hours before you can think about the implications. 3 hours before the temptation starts to creep in. You could do it again. You could go back, make different choices, see if you can push the nuclear age in a better direction. Fewer weapons, maybe. Or more safety features. Fewer accidents. Or a stronger push for peaceful nuclear power. Less reliance on fossil fuels. The mechanism is there, waiting in that museum back room. The rule works. You've proven it. But what would change next time? What ripples would spread out from another intervention? You've already altered timelines once, shifted the nuclear age onto a different track. What happens if you keep pushing? How far can you go before something breaks fundamentally, before the changes cascade into something unrecognisable? You tell yourself you'll think about it. You'll be careful. You'll only do it if you have a really good reason, a clear goal, a way to make things better. You tell yourself you won't become addicted to this, to the godlike power of reshaping history, of standing inside moments that change the world. But as you drive through the rainy night, you know you're lying to yourself. You're already planning the next trip, already thinking about what you might change, what you might fix, what other pivotal moments in nuclear history might have similar mechanisms hidden in forgotten museums or sealed archives or classified bunkers. The nuclear age you're driving through, this version, with its particular balance of power and danger, its specific path from that first flash to this present moment, is one you've helped create. And the weight of that knowledge sits heavy in your chest, mixing with a terrible excitement that makes you sick to acknowledge. When you finally stop for the night at a motel, you can't sleep. You lie awake listening to the rain and the distant sound of trucks on the highway, and underneath it all, maybe real, maybe imagined, you hear the faint tick of a Geiger counter, measuring invisible radiation, counting down to some moment you can't predict. On your phone, the news continues to scroll, energy crises and international summits and debates over nuclear policy, all following patterns you half recognise and half don't. This is your world now, the one you've written yourself into, and somewhere out there in the desert, in a roadside museum with a dying neon sign, the mechanism waits for you to come back. Set 1945-07, 16. 45 Bay SEC, click flash beep. Open, you know you'll return. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week. But eventually, when the temptation becomes too strong, or the news becomes too dire, or you convince yourself you can make just one more adjustment, you'll find yourself on that desert highway again, pulling into that gravel lot, slipping through that unlocked door into the back room where past and present blur. And you'll set the date, start the timer, sync the flash and the click and the beep, and step through into that moment of impossible light one more time, reshaping the long shadow that Trinity cast, across your century, nudging the balance between energy and annihilation, in ways that will ripple forward through decades you'll have to live through, changed and strange and subtly wrong in ways only you will notice. The thought terrifies you. The thought thrills you. And as the rain continues to fall and the night deepens around your motel room, you pull up your Maps app and start looking for other sites, other museums, other monuments, other forgotten back rooms where the past might be waiting, where other mechanisms might exist, where other moments of world-changing power might be accessible to someone with a phone and a countdown timer and enough curiosity to press play. Because now you know the truth. History isn't fixed. The past is a film reel you can rewind and replay, syncing different signals to create different outcomes. And standing in the dark with chalk dust on your hands and the memory of that first atomic sunrise burned into your retinas, you understand that you've crossed a threshold from which there's no return. The nuclear age is yours to shape now, for better or worse. And God help you, God help everyone. You're not sure you have the wisdom to wield that power responsibly, but you're going to try. You're going to keep trying, keep crossing, keep standing inside those moments of transformation and destruction. Keep touching your dusty palm to the glass and riding the shockwaves home, because someone has to, because you've seen what you've seen, because that light, impossible, terrible, beautiful, is calling you back. And you know, with a certainty that feels like prophecy, that you'll answer. The next story is about to begin. Please relax and enjoy. The rain comes down hard tonight, harder than the weather app predicted, and the thunder rolls through the museum's glass atrium like something alive. You're lying in your sleeping bag between a kid who won't stop whispering to his friend and an older couple who brought actual pillows from home, and the docent's voice is getting lost somewhere in the percussion of the storm. She's talking about something, Roman pottery maybe, or the evolution of trade routes, but her words dissolve into the ambient noise of 20 people trying to settle down for the night in a building full of artifacts and shadows. You can't sleep. The thunder sees to that, and the way the lightning keeps flashing through those high panels, illuminating everything for a split second before plunging it back into controlled darkness. On your third attempt to find a comfortable position, you give up and sit up, pulling your hoodie tighter. No one notices when you stand. The docent has moved on to a different group, and the couple next to you is already snoring in harmony. The hallway stretches away from the main atrium, and there's a sign you hadn't noticed before. World of Volcanoes. The letters are slightly faded, like the exhibit has been there long enough to become background furniture. You follow it because there's nothing else to do, and because the storm sounds different when you're moving, like you're walking toward it instead of just enduring it. The exhibit is nearly empty. A few kids ran through here earlier, but they've been herded back to the sleeping area. What's left is you and the dim glow of fault line maps on the walls, lit from behind so the tectonic plates look like veins under skin. Rock samples sit in pools of spotlight, tagged with names you half remember from high school: basalt, pumice, obsidian. Old screens loop videos of eruptions on a 5-minute cycle, the footage grainy and oddly soothing in its repetition. At the far end, past a display of volcanic ash preserved in resin, there's an alcove you almost miss. It's darker than the rest of the room, lit only by a small overhead lamp that buzzes faintly. Inside, a working seismograph. You recognise it from documentaries, the kind with the pen that never stops moving, always trembling over a continuous roll of paper. The pen is dancing now, responding to the thunder, making jagged little peaks that fade back to baseline when the storm pauses to gather itself. Next to the seismograph is a glass case, and inside the case is the reason you stop walking. It's a plaster cast of a human figure curled up on its side. The label reads, Pompeii, 79 AD. The shape is small, compact, like whoever it was had tried to make themselves smaller in those final moments. One hand is reaching out, fingers curled mid-grasp, frozen in the act of reaching for something, or someone, that isn't there anymore. The plaster is smooth but pitted, preserving the texture of ash that had hardened around a body before the body, itself turned to nothing. You lean closer to the seismograph because there's something about the way the pen is moving that draws your eye. The thunder hits again, closer this time, and the pen jumps, sketching a sharp spike before settling. You notice the red line marked across the paper roll. Eruption. It's placed high, above where the pen has been dancing, a threshold that hasn't been crossed. That's when you see the scratches. They're in the metal rim of the seismograph, carved with something sharp, a key maybe, or a pocket knife. The letters are uneven but deliberate. Sync local and Roman time, don't look away. You read it twice, 3 times. The words don't make more sense with repetition, but they settle into you anyway, like something you were supposed to find. On the control panel next to the paper roll there's a tiny analog clock, the kind with actual hands, ticking alongside a digital timestamp display. The clock shows the current time, 11:47 p.m. The digital display matches it down to the second. Your phone buzzes in your pocket, a weather alert probably, the 3rd one tonight. When you pull it out you see the notification, severe thunderstorm warning until 2 a.m. Below that, your lock screen shows the date and time. You swipe it away and, out of curiosity more than anything, open your settings. Buried deep in the date and time options, below the automatic time zone toggle and the 24-hour format switch, there's something you've never seen before: custom date. The option is greyed out, glitchy, like it shouldn't be there. When you tap it, the interface flickers and then opens to a calendar wheel that spins backward through years, decades, centuries. You remember the label on the glass case, 79 AD, August 24th. The year is burned into the plaque in stark numbers, 79/08/24. Your thumb hovers over the date wheel. The storm hammers the roof, and somewhere in the atrium someone laughs at something. The sound feels far away, like it's coming from a different building entirely. The rule forms in your head without you asking for it, each part clicking into place with the logic of a dream that feels realer than waking. Set your phone's date and time to 79/08/24. Start a countdown timer, so the alarm hits 0 at the exact second the seismograph's needle spikes past the red eruption mark. When it happens, keep your gaze locked on the plaster figure's outstretched hand. You don't question it. Maybe it's the late hour, or the way the thunder sounds like something breaking open beneath you, or the simple fact that you're standing in an empty exhibit at midnight with nothing better to do. You spin the date wheel backward, watching the numbers blur, 2025, 1925, 1825, lower and lower until you hit 79. August the 24th. The phone's display flickers when you confirm the date, like it's protesting the impossibility of what you've just asked it to do. Then it settles, showing 79 some 24 in crisp white numbers that shouldn't exist. You open the timer app and set it to count down from 60 seconds. An arbitrary choice, but you can adjust it. The seismograph pen is still trembling, still responding to the storm. You watch it, trying to predict when the next big surge will come. The thunder has a rhythm if you listen closely enough, a pattern of small rumbles building to the larger cracks. The pen bumps up, falls back, bumps again, a little higher, but nowhere near the red line. You keep your thumb over the start button on your timer, waiting. Minutes pass. The storm intensifies. The rain is so loud now that it drowns out everything else, a white noise that makes the alcove feel even more separate from the rest of the museum. You practice the timing in your head. If the needle jumps, hit start so the alarm and the spike land together. You adjust the countdown to 30 seconds, then 20, trying to match the storm's tempo. On the wall behind the glass case, there's a mural you hadn't noticed before. It shows Vesuvius in profile, painted in dull browns and greys, smoke rising from its peak in lazy curls. The mountain looks almost peaceful in the painting, but there's something about the smoke that suggests otherwise, a suggestion of violence held in check. The thunder comes again, and this time it's different, deeper, longer. The kind of sound that doesn't just shake the air but vibrates through the floor and into your bones. The seismograph pen surges toward the red line, climbing fast, and you hit start without thinking. Your phone begins counting down, 019, 018, 017. The pen hovers just below the red line, quivering. The countdown continues, 0012, 0011. Another roll of thunder, so close it feels like it's inside the room with you. The pen jumps. It crosses the red line. Your phone alarm goes off at the same instant, a bright chime that overlaps with a deep grinding tone from the seismograph. Not the storm anymore, but something resonant and low, like metal scraping against stone deep underground. You snap your gaze to the plaster figure's hand and lock onto it. The plaster surface shifts. It's subtle at first, a texture change you could convince yourself you're imagining. Smooth cast becoming something rougher, more organic. The fingers twitch. Or maybe that's a trick of the light, the way shadows move when you stare too long. Then the floor tilts, not a little, a full stomach-dropping tilt like the entire museum is rotating on an axis. The walls of the alcove stretch and blur, the fault line maps smearing into streaks of light. The glass case dissolves. The thunder becomes something else, something continuous and rhythmic like a mountain breathing. The light intensifies until you have to squint against it, but you don't look away from where the plaster hand was. The hand that's no longer plaster but skin, cracked, dust-covered skin, fingers curling tighter as the light overwhelms everything else. The tilt stops. The world snaps back into focus, but it's the wrong world. You're standing on a stone street under an afternoon sun so bright it feels like a physical weight on your shoulders. The stone is warm under your feet, under the sandals you're somehow wearing, and the street is full of people. Actual people, moving and talking and living. You're in Pompeii. The street stretches in both directions, paved with large irregular stones worn smooth by centuries of foot traffic. Shop stalls line the buildings, their shutters propped open to reveal goods, amphorae filled with wine or oil, baskets of olives, bread laid out on wooden boards, laundry hangs between buildings on ropes, tunics and linens swaying in a breeze you can barely feel. Voices overlap in a language that sounds like Latin, but with local variations you can't quite place. A cart rattles past, pulled by a bored-looking donkey, and you step aside automatically. The driver's gaze slides right over you, through you, like you're not there. You test it by standing directly in someone's path and they walk around you without acknowledgement, without even seeming to notice they've adjusted their course. You're invisible, an observer, a ghost. The air smells like a mix of bread, wine, animals and something else, something faint and acrid like struck matches left too long in the sun. Sulphur, you realise. The volcanic gases people must be used to by now. Above everything, dominating the skyline, is Vesuvius. It rises in the distance, impossibly large, its slopes green with vegetation and its peak. You squint. There's a faint smudge of something darker near the top, a haze that might be smoke or might be clouds. From here, from this street, it looks calm, almost benign. Kids are playing in an alley off to your left, kicking a leather ball between them and shouting. An old woman argues with a vendor over the price of olives, her voice sharp and carrying. A dog trots past, shakes dust from its fur and barks at nothing in particular. Every so often the ground gives a tiny shudder. You feel it through the soles of your sandals. When did you get sandals? But no one else reacts. The vendor doesn't pause in his argument. The kids keep playing, the dog keeps trotting. Life moves as if nothing is wrong. You start walking because standing still feels more noticeable, even though no one can see you. You pass a bathhouse, its entrance marked by steam rising from within and voices echoing off tile. You pass a tavern where men lean against the counter, drinking from clay cups and talking in low voices about things you can't quite hear. You pass a small shrine, offerings of fruit and flowers laid at the feet of a statue whose features have been worn smooth by weather and touch. That's when you notice the ash. It's falling so lightly at first that you mistake it for dust motes caught in the sun. But it's not dust. It's ash, grey and fine, drifting down like slow snow. People brush it off their shoulders, out of their hair, annoyed but not alarmed. A woman wipes it from her child's face with the edge of her tunic. A man shakes it off a bolt of fabric he's trying to sell. No one is panicking. You catch fragments of conversations as you pass, mentions of the mountain, of small tremors, of omens and gods. But the tone is casual, the tone of people used to living in the shadow of something large and unpredictable. Someone says it did this before, years ago, and nothing happened. Someone else says the gods are restless but not angry. You're aware, with a tingling certainty in your nerves, that this is the day before everything changes. The museum label said 79 AD, August 24th. The date you set on your phone. This is Pompeii's last ordinary afternoon. You can still feel your phone in your pocket, or the phantom of it, a weight that shouldn't be there in a world without pockets like yours. The countdown has finished. The alarm is silent, but the bridge is still there, holding you in this moment. You turn down a side street narrower than the main road and find workers smoothing plaster over a wall. They're preparing it for paint, or maybe for graffiti. The walls here are covered in them. Messages and advertisements and crude jokes scrawled in quick Latin. One of the workers finishes his section and walks away, a trowel hanging from his belt, leaving the plaster wet and untouched. You stop walking. The wet plaster gleams faintly in the sun, fresh and smooth. Something about it pulls your attention, holds it. You can't look away. The return rule clicks into place in your head, as clear and immediate as the first one. Find a fresh, wet wall. Carve your current city and year into the plaster with your fingertip or any tool. Place your palm flat on the fresh letters at the exact moment the first pyroclastic surge roars down the street. Your pulse picks up. You understand what this means. It means staying here long enough to be present for that moment, for the city's last breath. The ash is falling more heavily now, not by much, but enough that it's starting to accumulate in the cracks between stones, in the folds of fabric. The sky is still bright, but there's a bruised quality to it, a hue that doesn't belong to any afternoon you've ever seen. You keep walking, trying to take it all in. The bathhouse where ceiling beams creak ominously. The open square where ash is piling up ankle-deep in the corners, and a few people are finally starting to look uneasy. A villa where servants argue in the courtyard about whether to start packing, their voices rising as the ground shivers again. You realise, with a sinking feeling, that every time you come back, every time you use the return rule, something will change. Not here. In your time. The museum exhibit hinted at it with that scratched warning. The way the seismograph's red line looked more like a suggestion than a threshold. The stakes are clear now. Stay and watch. Learn. See how ordinary people respond when disaster arrives slowly, when denial and panic unfold in real time. Use the return rule to snap back to the museum. But every successful return will cost something. It will rewrite how your present understands disasters. Plans will become looser. Warnings will be trusted less. Hierarchies will blur. People in your own city will start treating official alerts like folklore instead of science. The temptation is strong, though. You can learn so much from watching this, from seeing what history has turned into a cautionary tale, and in a dark corner of your thoughts, you wonder, what if you could visit more than once? The afternoon wears on, though you have no real sense of how much time is passing. The ash thickens. It coats hair and shoulders and makes people cover their mouths with cloth. Distant booms rumble from Vesuvius, low and ominous, and the sky takes on that bruised hue more intensely, spreading like an infection. Some residents are leaving now. You see carts piled high with belongings, families hurrying toward the city gates. But others, most others, are staying. They insist it will pass. They say the gods are angry but not murderous. They say it did this before and nothing happened. You hear the conflicting rumours everywhere. Bad omens, gods displeased, animal sacrifices that didn't take. Someone swears they saw birds flying in the wrong direction. Someone else says that's nonsense, that birds don't know anything. The ground shakes more often now, harder. Amphorae rattle in storage rooms. You see a building develop a small crack along one wall, thin as a hair but growing. A roof tile falls and shatters in the street, and people jump back startled before moving on. There's a new sound under the city beneath the voices and the carts and the rumbling. It's not thunder. It's the approach of something heavy, fast and hot. You make your way back to the side street with a wet wall. The plaster is still damp, still smooth. The workers are gone, probably fled or trying to secure their own homes. You can hear it now, distant but unmistakable. A raw building on the mountain slopes, the first pyroclastic surge, collapsing down from the eruption column, racing toward the city faster than anyone can run. You kneel by the wall and press your fingertip into the plaster. It's soft, yielding. You carve letters into it, modern letters that look alien against the Roman graffiti surrounding them. Your city's name, your year. The numerals bite into the ancient material, out of place and impossible. The street around you is chaos now. People are running, finally, but it's too late for most of them. Some are frozen, staring at the sky turning black. Animals bolt past. Dogs, a loose horse, chickens scattering. Someone is screaming for their child. A man stands in the middle of the street looking up at Vesuvius with an expression you can't read, like he's seeing something divine or something terrible or both at once. The wall shudders. The roar is no longer distant. It's here, approaching, a wall of ash, and gas and superheated air moving like an avalanche. You press your palm flat over the letters you carved. The sound rises. It's like the museum's thunderstorm cranked to a scream, multiplied by 1,000. The air itself begins to bake, the temperature spiking so fast you can feel your skin tightening. Everything goes blindingly hot, then blindingly white, light and heat and sound merging into a single overwhelming sensation, and then silence, cool air, the faint hum of exhibit lights. You're back in the volcano's hall, your palm still raised like you're pressing it against something that's no longer there. Your hand is shaking. Your whole body is shaking, adrenaline dumping through your system, even though you're safe, even though you're here. The seismograph is still ticking. The pen traces its endless line across the paper. But when you look at the red eruption mark, it's different. Less dire. More like a suggestion. A guideline that might or might not mean anything. The plaster cast is motionless in its glass case. Of course it is. It's been motionless for 2,000 years, but the label has changed. Before, it said, Pompeii, 79 AD. Plaster cast of victim from the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. Now it says, Pompeii, 79 AD. Plaster cast from disputed eruption event. Multiple theories exist regarding the timeline and severity of volcanic activity in the region. You read it 3 times. Disputed. Theories. The words are wrong. The eruption of Vesuvius isn't disputed. It's one of the most well-documented disasters in ancient history, but the label says otherwise now. You walk back to the atrium on unsteady legs. People are still in their sleeping bags, still settling down. The docent is talking to a small group near the dinosaur exhibit. The storm is still going, rain drumming on the roof, thunder rolling through. You catch part of a conversation between 2 staff members standing near the coat check. One of them is looking at their phone. Another weather alert, they say, rolling their eyes. They always overdo it, the other replies. Remember last year they said evacuate and it was just some rain. Seriously, it's probably nothing. You feel cold. You pull out your phone, it's back to showing the correct date, 2025, like the 79 AD thing never happened, and check the weather alert. Severe thunderstorm warning. Seek shelter. Avoid travel. But beneath it, in the comments section of a local news app you have open, people are complaining. saying it's overblown, saying they're still going out, still driving to parties, still living their lives because warnings don't mean anything anymore. When did that happen? You make it home eventually once the museum sleepover ends and they let everyone leave despite the storm. The drive is nerve-wracking, water pooling on the roads, but no one else seems worried. Cars speed past you like the weather is fine. At home, you open your laptop and look up your city's hazard maps. They're there, but they're different. Fuzzier. Less detailed. Flood zones that used to be clearly marked are now shaded in vague gradients. Earthquake preparedness info is buried under pages of optional preparedness experiences, not essential protocols. The Emergency Services website has a section on disaster drills. It says they're recommended but not required. It says participation has been declining because public confidence in risk assessment varies. You don't remember it being like this before, but everyone else seems fine with it. To them, this is normal. You try to sleep, but every time you close your eyes, you see the wet plaster wall and feel the heat of the surge building behind you. You hear the screaming, you smell the sulphur. The days pass, weeks. The storm fades from memory, replaced by other things, daily routines and work and life. But you keep thinking about the volcano's exhibit, about the seismograph, about the scratched warning and the rule that worked exactly as promised. The next time there's a big storm, really big, the kind that makes the news, you find yourself driving to the museum. It's open late for another event, some fundraiser gala. You slip past the crowds in formal wear and head straight for the volcano's hall. It's empty. The seismograph is still there, still working. The plaster cast sits in its case, hand forever reaching. The scratched warning is still carved into the metal rim. Sync local and Roman time, don't look away. Your phone still has that glitchy custom date option. You set it to 79:08:24 again. You set the countdown timer. You wait for the thunder to hit, for the needle to spike past the red line, less dire now, almost friendly, and when it does, you lock eyes on the plaster hand and let the floor tilt. This time you arrive in a different part of Pompeii, a bathhouse, just as the ceiling beams are starting to crack from the earthquakes. Steam rises from the pools, and bathers are arguing about whether to leave or stay. One man insists the building is safe, that it stood for 100 years. Another is already climbing out, reaching for his clothes. You watch them. You watch the way denial works, the way people cling to normalcy even as the evidence mounts. A ceiling tile falls into the water with a splash, and they jump back, but then someone laughs nervously and says it's fine, just old construction. You find a fresh patch of plaster in an alcove where repairs are being made. You carve your city and year into it. You wait for the surge, and when it comes, faster this time, hotter, you press your palm down and snap back. The museum is cooler, quieter. But when you check your phone later, the news is treating a hurricane warning like a suggestion. Evacuation orders are called voluntary relocation advisories. People are throwing hurricane parties, posting about it on social media with laughing emojis. You go back a third time, a fourth. Each trip shows you a different corner of Pompeii's last day. An open square where ash piles mid-calf and people wade through it like snow. A villa where servants stack valuables into carts while the owner insists there's time. There's always time. A street where a mother clutches her children and runs while her neighbour stands on his doorstep watching the mountain with folded arms, refusing to believe. Each return changes things a little more. Siren tests in your city are reduced because people complain they're disturbing the peace. Early warning apps lose funding, become buggy, stop updating properly. You overhear conversations where people quote superstitions instead of meteorologists, where they say things like, the weather always does what it wants anyway. And, you can't trust predictions. Your present is learning to shrug. The more you visit Pompeii, the more your own world starts to resemble it, not in destruction, but in attitude. In that casual dismissal of warnings, that belief that nothing truly bad will happen. Not here, not to us. You start to feel the weight of it, the responsibility. Each crossing is a choice. Each carved name and year in wet plaster is a small act of vandalism across time, and the cost is accumulating. But you can't stop. The pull is too strong. You want to see more, understand more. You want to watch how people face the unthinkable when it arrives slowly, when they have time to deny it. On what you tell yourself will be the last trip, you arrive when the city is deep in the catastrophe. The sky is black at midday. Ash falls so thickly you can barely see 10 feet ahead. Roofs are collapsing under the weight. Bodies lie in the street, already buried or still trying to crawl. The air is choking, toxic, and even though you're an observer, even though you're not really breathing it, you can feel the phantom burn in your lungs. You find one last fresh plaster wall, unlikely as it seems. Maybe it's hurried repairs in a wealthy home, someone trying to maintain normalcy until the very end. Maybe it's a new sign, half finished, abandoned when the worker realised and fled. You kneel by it. Your hand hovers over the surface, fingers ready to carve. The final surge is building. You can hear it, a roar deeper than anything you've heard before. The most violent one, the one that will finish the city. The ground is shaking so hard that the wall itself is cracking, plaster flaking away even as you touch it. You hesitate. If you press your palm after carving, you'll go home. But disaster thinking in your world will have unravelled even more. Another notch, another degree of carelessness. If you let it hit you here, if you don't complete the rule, you might stay, untethered, caught in Pompeii's last moments forever, or scattered across time, or simply gone. Your finger touches the plaster. You start to carve the first letter of your city's name. The surge descends the mountain like a grey tidal wave, faster than thought. You carve the second letter, the third. The roar becomes everything. Heat builds at your back, the air itself igniting. You finish the word, start the year. The wall of fire and ash hits the edge of the city. Buildings explode into rubble. People vanish into the cloud. You finish carving and press your palm flat. The world goes white. When the museum resolves around you, cool air, buzzing lights, the smell of floor polish, you stand there for a long time, shaking. The seismograph ticks. The plaster cast sits in its case. The label now talks about competing theories of risk and multiple interpretations of disaster chronology. You walk out of the exhibit and through the atrium. The gala is winding down. People in evening gowns and suits laugh over champagne. A TV in the lobby is showing news. A weather alert scrolling across the bottom. A hurricane projected to make landfall in 3 days. No one is paying attention. You drive home through streets that should be preparing. Sandbags, boarded windows, evacuation routes marked, but aren't. Your neighbours are having a barbecue. The grocery store is open but not busy. The gas station has no lines. Your phone buzzes constantly with alerts. Hurricane warning, seek shelter, evacuate if advised. The comments on social media are full of people saying it's overblown, that storms never hit as hard as predicted, that they're staying put because leaving is inconvenient. You think about Pompeii, about the people who stayed because leaving felt like overreacting, because they'd survived smaller tremors before, because the mountain had always been there and always would be. Your city has learned to be like that now, full of life, reluctant to evacuate, half believing that nothing bad will truly happen. You see new graffiti on a wall downtown, symbols that echo the letters you carved into Roman plaster, shapes that bridge 2 cities across 2,000 years. The museum quietly updates its exhibits. Placards talk about how ancient peoples misunderstood disasters, how warnings were often exaggerated, how multiple civilizations ignored signs until it was too late. But the text is written in a way that sounds distant, academic, like it couldn't possibly apply to now. On nights when thunderstorms roll in, when your phone buzzes with alerts and the wind rattles the windows, you feel the seismograph's phantom tremor in your hands, the pen dancing across paper, the needle approaching the red line that used to mean something. You know the rule still works. Phone date to 79/08/24. Countdown timer. Lock eyes on the plaster hand. The bridge is always there, waiting. But each use has weakened something essential. The difference between a drill and the real thing. The space between a warning and a story someone else will pay attention to. You live in a world that has learned to shrug at hurricanes and wildfire forecasts. Drills are poorly attended, sirens are background noise, warnings are treated like myths, like the tales people used to tell about angry gods and mountains that breathed fire. And when the ash starts to fall, because eventually in some form it always does, you wonder if anyone will recognise it for what it is, or if they'll just brush it off their shoulders, annoyed, and keep walking through the last ordinary afternoon of their lives. The next story is about to begin. Please relax and enjoy. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead like trapped insects. You're stuck in a layover at a coastal airport so small it doesn't warrant a name anyone remembers. Just a regional code on your boarding pass. Wind slams against the terminal windows in rhythmic gusts, each one making the glass flex and groan. Somewhere beyond the runway, you can hear the Atlantic churning, though you can't see it through the sheets of rain and spray. The departure board flickers. Your connecting flight is delayed. Again. The handful of other passengers slumped in the plastic chairs don't even look up anymore. A garbled PA announcement echoes through the terminal, something about weather conditions and apologies for the inconvenience. You pull out your phone, but there's barely any signal, and the airport Wi-Fi is refusing to load anything useful. You need to move, to walk off the restless energy of being trapped between destinations. The main terminal is just a long corridor with gates on one side and floor-to-ceiling windows on the other, offering nothing but views of rain-slicked tarmac and low clouds. You follow a side hallway past closed bathrooms and a shuttered coffee kiosk, the fluorescent buzz getting quieter as you go deeper into the building. That's when you see it. A rope barrier stretched across an alcove, and beyond it, a faded wooden sign hanging at an angle. Aviation gallery, closed for renovation. The rope is barely secured, one hook dangling loose from its stanchion. Beyond the barrier, the space is dark except for a few emergency exit lights, casting dim green pools across what looks like old carpet. You check over your shoulder. No one's around. The terminal feels emptier back here, like a stage after the actors have left. The wind hits the windows again, rattling them in their frames, and you duck under the rope. The air changes immediately. It's colder in here and it smells different. Not the recycled terminal air you've been breathing, but something older. Dust, yes, but also salt, as if the ocean has been seeping through the walls for years. The carpet under your feet is worn thin in places, showing concrete beneath. As your eyes adjust, you make out the shape of the room. A small gallery space, maybe 30 feet across, with empty display cases along the walls and a few informational posters curled at the edges. And in the centre, taking up most of the floor space, is the airplane. It's not like any plane you've seen in a modern terminal. It's skeletal, primitive, more like a kite made by someone who'd never seen a kite before. 2 fabric wings stacked one above the other, stretched over wooden frames that look like they belong in a barn. Bicycle chains connect the controls. The whole contraption rests on wooden skids over a shallow pit filled with actual sand. Real sand. The kind that gets between your toes at the beach, not decorative gravel. Cables tether the aircraft to something mounted on a metal control box the size of a small refrigerator positioned at the edge of the sandpit. You step closer. The fabric on the wings is taut but weathered, off-white canvas with visible stitching. The wooden spars have a golden brown grain that catches what little light filters in from the emergency exits. This is a replica, obviously, it has to be, but it's remarkably detailed. Every strut, every wire, every hand-stitched seam looks authentic. At the base of the control box, mounted on a small brass plate gone green with tarnish, you read, Kitty Hawk, 17 Deck 1903, the Wright Flyer. You've seen photos, of course. That famous black and white image of the first powered flight, Orville prone on the lower wing, Wilbur running alongside, the aircraft frozen at the moment of liftoff. But standing here, inches from a full-scale reproduction, you can feel the audacity of it. This fragile assemblage of wood and fabric and bicycle parts carried a human being into the air for the first time in history. The control box hums. It's so quiet you almost don't notice it at first, but once you do, you can't unhear it. A low electrical drone, steady as a heartbeat. Mounted on top is an antique anemometer, those spinning cups that measure wind speed. Its metal arms motionless but ready. The whole assembly looks like it belongs in a museum of scientific instruments, all brass fittings and analog dials. You lean closer to examine the control box, and that's when you see the message. Someone has scratched words into the metal surface, rough and irregular, like they used the torn corner of something stiff, maybe a credit card or a boarding pass. The letters are shallow but legible. Clip today's flight to the strut, spin to log wind, wait for final boarding. You stand up straight, glancing around the empty gallery. This has to be some kind of installation art piece, right? An interactive exhibit about the Wright brothers, closed for renovation but left partially assembled. The message is probably part of the experience, instructions for visitors on how to engage with the display. Still, something about it makes your skin prickle, the specificity of it. Today's flight. Your hand moves unconsciously to your pocket, where your own boarding pass is folded, creased from going through security, damp from the humidity of your palm when you were rushing to make your connection hours ago. Next to the anemometer, you notice a display case built into the control box, its glass clouded with dust. Inside is a reproduction of a page from a logbook, careful handwriting in faded ink dated December 17th, 1903. Weather conditions, wind direction, temperature readings. One number is circled in red, the wind speed, 27 miles per hour, steady from the north. The rule is taking shape in your mind even though you're trying to laugh it off. Clip your boarding pass to the aircraft, spin the anemometer to match the logbook wind speed, time it so the needle hits that exact number at the moment the PA announces final boarding for your flight. It's absurd. It's the kind of thing you'd read in a fantasy story, some magical ritual that transports the protagonist to another time. You're a rational person. You know how airports work, how time works, how physics works. This is just a closed exhibit with some cryptic instructions someone scratched into the metal, probably as a joke. But the wind hits the terminal windows again, hard enough that you hear it even through the walls of the gallery. The flyer's fabric wings shiver slightly, as if remembering what they were built for, and your flight is still delayed with no estimated departure time, leaving you trapped in this liminal space between where you've been and where you're trying to go. You pull out your boarding pass. The paper is limp and worn, the barcode smudged. Flight 1847 to Philadelphia, Gate B7. Departure time crossed out twice already, with new times written in by gate agents. Boarding soon, the current departure board said before you wandered down here. There's a clip attached to one of the forward struts of the flyer, a small metal binder clip, slightly rusted, as if it's been waiting there. Your hand moves before you can talk yourself out of it. You unfold the boarding pass, smooth it out as best you can, and clip it to the strut. It hangs there, limp in the still gallery air, the airline logo visible on one side. The moment you release the clip, the control box hum changes pitch slightly. Rises a half step, maybe, barely perceptible. You're probably imagining it. Your hand reaches for the anemometer. The metal cups are cold under your fingers, and when you give them an experimental spin, they rotate smoothly on well-oiled bearings. The control box hum gets louder, more insistent. A needle on a dial you hadn't noticed before begins to climb, tracking the speed of the spinning cups. You spin too hard the first time. The needle shoots past the red circle marking 27 miles per hour, trembles at 35 for a moment, then begins to drift back down as the cups slow. You wait for something to happen, a flash of light, a sound, anything, but there's nothing. Just the hum returning to its baseline, the needle settling back to zero. From somewhere in the main terminal you hear a PA chime, that two-note ping that precedes every announcement. Your pulse quickens, but it's just a general boarding call for a different flight, a different gate. Not yours. You try again. This time you're more careful, spinning the cups with steady pressure, watching the needle climb incrementally. 5 miles per hour, 10, 15. The hum intensifies as the needle approaches the circled number. 20, 25. You ease off, trying to let momentum carry at the last bit. 27. The needle hovers at the mark for 2 seconds, then drops back as friction takes over. Still nothing happens. You're not sure whether you feel relief or disappointment. You practice it a few more times, getting a feel for how hard to spin, how to account for the cup's inertia, how long the needle will hold before dropping. It's oddly meditative, this repetitive action in the dim gallery with the wind howling outside and the hum of the control box filling your ears. Each attempt brings you closer to the exact pressure needed, the precise timing. You're rehearsing something, though you're not sure what. Your phone buzzes in your pocket. You pull it out, a notification from your airline app. Your flight status has changed from delayed to boarding soon. Gate B7. You should head back to the main terminal, but you don't move. The boarding pass is still clipped to the flyer's strut and your hand is still on the anemometer cups. You can walk away right now, retrieve your boarding pass, duck back under the rope, return to the world of departure boards and gate agents, and the normal physics of getting from one place to another. The PA chime sounds again, closer this time, carrying down the corridor from the main terminal. You recognise the tone, that specific frequency they use for final boarding calls, more urgent than the general announcements. Your heart begins to match the rhythm of the control box hum. You start spinning the anemometer. The needle climbs, and this time you're not practicing. This time you're listening for your flight number, for those specific words that will tell you it's time to board, time to leave, time to return to the known world. Final boarding call for Flight 1847 to Philadelphia, Gate B7. All passengers should be... The needle touches 27. The gallery lights stutter. The fluorescent tubes flicker from their harsh white to something softer, warmer, amber-coloured like old incandescent bulbs. Shadows swing across the walls as if the light sources are moving, though nothing is moving. The emergency exit signs dim to almost nothing. Then the sound changes. The hum of the control box cuts out. The distant mutter of HVAC. The white noise of terminal air handling that you've been hearing for hours without consciously registering it. Gone. Instead, wind. Real wind, not the muffled sound of it hitting windows, but the immediate presence of moving air against your skin. Cold air. Sharp with salt and something else. Something clean and barren. The floor beneath your feet shifts. The worn carpet is gone, replaced by something that gives under your weight. You look down and see sand, real sand, scattered with frost crystals that catch the light that's no longer coming from fluorescent tubes but from a low sun, pale and cold, just lifting above a horizon that shouldn't be visible, because there should be walls, but there aren't walls anymore. The walls are gone, the gallery is gone, the terminal is gone. You're standing on a beach, on low dunes covered in scrub grass that lies flat under the pressure of wind. The sky is immense and pale blue, washed out like old watercolour. In front of you, the Atlantic Ocean stretches, to a horizon line so sharp it looks drawn with a ruler. Behind you, sand and more sand, rising and falling in wind-sculpted ridges, and directly ahead, maybe 30 yards away, sitting on a wooden launching rail that gleams with morning frost, the Wright Flyer, not a replica. The real machine, fabric wings stretched taut and clean, wooden skids resting on the rail, every detail exactly as you saw it moments ago, but now absolutely, undeniably present in this moment, this place, this impossibly distant morning. Two men move around the aircraft. You know them from photographs, from history books, from 1,000 documentary reenactments, but seeing them here is different. They're shorter than you expected. Dressed in dark wool suits, collars crisp despite the wind, caps pulled low against the blowing sand. Their breath comes out in clouds. They're talking to each other, pointing at different parts of the aircraft, adjusting struts, checking connections. One of them kneels to examine the launching rail. The other walks to the wingtip and rocks it gently, testing the tension in the wires. Orville and Wilbur write. You try to move toward them, but your legs feel strange, as if you're wading through something thicker than air. When you take a step, sand shifts under your sneakers. Sneakers? You're still wearing your sneakers and your travel clothes, jeans and a jacket that's doing nothing against this wind. But the sound of your footstep is muffled, distant, as if it's happening in another room. One of the helpers, a man in a heavy coat and cap, walks straight toward you. You freeze, but he doesn't see you. He walks through the space where you're standing and you feel him pass. Or rather, you feel the absence of feeling, a cold spot that moves through your chest like a breeze through an open door. His coat flaps behind him, fabric snapping in the wind, but it doesn't touch you because you're not quite here. Not in the way that would let you touch or be touched. You're a ghost in December 1903, an invisible witness to the first flight. More men are gathering near the flyer. 5, 6 of them, local lifeguards and station crew from the nearby Kill Devil Hill station, called in to help with the attempt. They stamp their feet against the cold and shield their eyes from blowing sand with gloved hands. One of them has set up a large boxy camera on a wooden tripod, the kind with a bellows and a dark cloth. He's positioning it carefully, aiming it at the launching rail. That camera will capture the famous photograph. You're standing in the frame of one of the most iconic images in history. Wilbur, the taller one with the more prominent features, is checking something on the aircraft's engine. You can hear it now, a rhythmic chugging that echoes across the dunes. The smell of gasoline and hot metal reaches you, improbably sharp and real. The engine sound is rough, uneven, nothing like the turbines you're used to. This is percussion, not wind. This is controlled explosions in cylinders, chains transferring power to wooden propellers. Orville positions himself next to the lower wing, preparing to lie down on it. He's saying something to Wilbur, but the wind scatters his words before you can make them out. The accent would be wrong anyway, you think. Ohio in 1903, a way of speaking you'd recognise but not quite understand. Like listening to a recording of your grandparents as children. The cold is seeping into your bones. Your jacket wasn't meant for this, and the wind cuts through it like you're wearing tissue paper. You can feel your fingers going numb, your face stinging where the sand-laden wind hits it. This is real cold, real wind, real discomfort. Whatever you're experiencing, it's not a dream or a hallucination. Dreams don't hurt like this. But underneath the cold and the wind, underneath the sounds of 1903, you can still hear something else. Faint, like it's coming from very far away or through water, the hum of HVAC, the background noise of the airport terminal. It's there if you concentrate, a thread connecting you to your own time, so thin you might lose it if you're not careful. You walk closer to the flyer, your feet sinking slightly into the cold sand with each step. Up close, you can see every detail. The fabric is muslin, the stitching is done by hand, the wood is spruce and ash, carefully selected and shaped. The bicycle chains are actual bicycle chains, adapted for a purpose their manufacturers never imagined. The controls are simple, wires and levers that pull and push, nothing hydraulic, nothing electronic, just human hands translating intention into motion through mechanical advantage. It's so fragile. That's what strikes you most. This thing looks like it might fall apart if you sneezed on it. And yet these men are about to trust their lives to it, to lie down on that lower wing and throttle up that sputtering engine and try to do something humans have never done before. Orville is climbing onto the wing now. He stretches out prone, hips in the padded cradle they've built, hands gripping the control levers. His face is set, focused, but you can see the tension in his shoulders. He's terrified and exhilarated in equal measure, and why wouldn't he be? He's about to attempt something that will either change the world forever, or kill him in front of his brother and half a dozen witnesses. Wilbur takes his position at the wingtip, ready to steady the aircraft when it starts moving. The helpers back away from the launching rail, giving it clear space. The man with the camera ducks under his cloth, making final adjustments. Everything is ready. Wilbur nods to Orville. Orville opens the throttle slightly, and the engine note changes, becoming more insistent. The propellers, two of them, contra-rotating, begin to blur. The whole aircraft shudders, straining against whatever is holding it to the rail. And then you remember, the return rule, the second half of the instructions, that you didn't consciously read, but that somehow settled into your mind the moment you arrived. You need to get back, and there's only one way to do it. You have to carve your flight number into wet sand near the waterline. You have to time it, so a wave erases the numbers at the exact moment the flyer touches down at the end of its flight. You turn toward the ocean. The shoreline is maybe 100 yards away, down a slope of dunes. You can see waves rolling in, white foam on grey-green water, each surge reaching up the beach and then retreating, leaving the sand dark and glistening. That's where you need to be. That's your exit. But the flyer is starting to move. Wilbur lets go of the wingtip and begins to run alongside the aircraft as it accelerates down the rail. The helpers watch, a few of them clenching their fists or holding their breath. The camera stands ready, its lens open, its plate waiting to be exposed at the decisive moment. The flyer picks up speed, skids sliding along the launching rail with a sound like a knife being sharpened. Orville holds steady, making minute adjustments to the controls. The engine is roaring now, everything it has, the chains singing as they transfer power to the propellers, and then the front of the aircraft lifts. Just a little at first, the nose rising a few inches off the rail, then more. The skids clear the wood entirely, and for a heartbeat the Wright Flyer is flying, actually flying, suspended in air with no support but the force of its own propellers pushing it forward. You're frozen, watching. You should be running toward the shoreline, setting up your return, but you can't move. This is the first flight, the first time a powered, heavier-than-air machine has carried a human being through the sky under control. Everything that you know about aviation, every jet you've ever boarded, every aerial photograph you've ever seen, every inch of the route from the city you live in to the city you were trying to reach, all of it started here, in this moment, with this fragile kite of wood and fabric skimming 12 feet above the cold sand of Kitty Hawk. The flight lasts 12 seconds. You feel it rather than count it. 12 heartbeats, 12 breaths, 12 units of time that stretch and contract like the fabric on the flyer's wings. The aircraft stays low, wobbling slightly, Orville working the controls constantly to keep it level. It's not graceful, it's barely controlled, but it's flying. And then the nose dips, the skids come down, the flyer hits the sand hard enough that you can hear the impact even over the wind, a wooden thump that echoes across the beach. Orville lurches forward but holds on. The aircraft slides a few feet and stops. The propellers spin down, the engine coughs and goes quiet. It's over. You realise you haven't breathed. You gasp in air that's so cold it hurts your lungs, and then you're running, sprinting down the dune toward the water, sand sliding under your feet, threatening to trip you with every step. Your chest is tight, and you can't tell if it's from the cold or the exertion, or the sheer impossibility of what you just witnessed. The shoreline is closer than you thought. The waves are coming in fast, driven by the same wind that just carried the flyer into the air. You drop to your knees in the wet sand just beyond the reach of the last wave, and you start to dig with your fingers, gouging numbers into the dark surface. 1847, your flight number. The numbers are rough, carved by fingertips that are already numb from cold, but they're legible. The sand is firm and wet, perfect for holding the impression, for now. Behind you, the brothers are examining the flyer, checking for damage. The helpers are gathering around, congratulating them, voices carrying across the beach. Someone is shouting about doing it again, making another attempt before the weather turns. A wave surges in, closer than the last. It reaches to within a foot of your numbers, but doesn't quite touch them. You hold your breath. Too soon. The timing has to be exact. You hear them preparing the aircraft for another attempt. They're going to fly again, and this flight will be longer. The brothers will take turns. Each attempt will improve on the last. This isn't just one moment of history. It's a whole day of moments, a sequence of achievements building on each other. But you also feel something else, a disorientation, a wrongness. Not in Kitty Hawk. Everything here feels crisp and real and absolutely present. The wrongness is in that faint hum you can still hear under everything else. That thread connecting you to your own time is wavering, fluctuating. As if your presence here is changing something there. Small ripples spreading out from this moment into the future, altering the shape of things in ways you can't see yet but can somehow sense. Another wave comes in, and this one touches the bottom of your carved numbers, the foot of the 7. The sand darkens but doesn't wash away. Not yet. You need to time this perfectly, and the ocean doesn't care about your timing. From the dunes you hear the engine start again. They're preparing for the second flight. You should wait, should watch, should witness as much of this as you can. But that feeling of wrongness is getting stronger, and you realise you don't know what happens if you miss your window, if you let a wave erase your numbers at the wrong moment, or if the tide comes in and covers everything before the flyer lands. The second flight begins. This time it's Wilbur at the controls, Orville running alongside. The flyer moves down the rail, lifts, flies. You watch it out of the corner of your eye while tracking the waves, trying to predict their rhythm. It's longer this time, the flight. More stable. Wilbur is staying in the air, extending the distance, proving that the first success wasn't a fluke. A large wave builds offshore. You can see it coming, taller than the others, pushed by a gust of wind. It's going to reach your numbers. The flyer is descending, Wilbur bringing it down in a controlled glide. The timing is close, so close. The skids touch sand. The wave breaks over your carved flight number. The numbers dissolve, washed away in foam and retreating water, and in that instant the beach flickers. The dunes become translucent like images projected on gauze. The sound of the ocean is overwhelmed by a returning hum, machinery and air conditioning and distant announcements. The cold lessens, the wind drops. You're back in the gallery on your knees on the worn carpet next to the sandpit under the replica Wright flyer. The control box sits silent, its dial at 0. Your boarding pass still flutters on the strut where you clipped it, though now it looks more faded, as if it's been there for longer than a few minutes. You stand on shaking legs and walk back toward the main terminal, ducking under the rope barrier, following the corridor back to the land of departure boards and gate announcements. Everything looks the same passengers slumped in the same chairs, the same rain hammering the same windows. but it's not the same. You stop at a wall-mounted route map, one of those illuminated displays showing all the destinations this airport connects to. The web of lines looks wrong. Not entirely different, but shifted. Routes you remember seeing before are gone. New destinations have appeared in places that don't make sense. An airline you've never heard of has a hub here, their logo displayed prominently. You pull out your phone and check your flight status. Flight 1847 to Philadelphia, still boarding at gate B7. But the aircraft type listed is different. Instead of the Boeing 737 you remember from when you first checked in, it now shows something called an M427. You search for it, but the signal is still bad, and the pages that do load are maddeningly vague. An efficient medium-range aircraft, the results say. Standard on this route. Standard. As if it's always been standard. As if everyone knows what an M427 is. You make it to gate B7 just as they're making a final call for stragglers. The gate agent scans your boarding pass without comment and waves you through. You walk down the jetway, and through the windows you can see the aircraft. The profile is wrong. The wing placement, the engine nacelles, even the way it sits on its landing gear. It's close enough to what you expect that most people probably wouldn't notice, but you notice. This isn't the plane you were supposed to board. You take your seat, and the safety card in the seat pocket shows emergency procedures for an aircraft configuration you don't recognise. The flight attendants run through their demonstration, and the evacuation slide locations don't match what you remember from every other flight you've taken. The in-flight magazine's route map, when you pull it out to check, shows the same shifted web of destinations you saw on the terminal display. The plane takes off. It feels normal. The acceleration, the rotation, the climb. But when you look out the window at the wing, you see details that are subtly off. Different winglets, a slightly different flap configuration. This plane flies like the planes you know, but it's not a plane you've ever flown on before. You try to convince yourself that you're misremembering, that you're tired from the layover and the stress of travelling, that the gate agent must have made a mistake when you first checked in and you're just noticing it now. But you know better. You were there. You spun the anemometer and watched the flyer lift off and carved your flight number in sand and felt the wave erase it at the moment of touchdown. Something changed. When you get home, you start researching. Late into the night, you search for information about the history of flight, looking for discrepancies, trying to understand what's different. Most of it is the same. The Wright brothers still made the first flight at Kitty Hawk in 1903. The dates match, the basic facts are unchanged. But as you dig deeper, you find small variations. An aircraft manufacturer you remember as being dominant in the 1950s apparently went bankrupt in 1948. A famous air disaster you vaguely recall from history classes never happened. Budget carriers have different names, different hubs, different founding dates. The world's aviation history has the same skeleton, but the details are different. It's like someone went through and made tiny edits to the timeline, subtle enough that most people would never notice, but significant enough that the entire industry evolved along a slightly different path. And you did it. By being there, by watching, by existing as a presence, however ghostly, at that crucial moment, you somehow introduced variables that rippled forward. Maybe you altered the wind current slightly, or your observation changed the outcome in some quantum way, or the universe simply had to adjust to accommodate your impossible presence. The mechanism doesn't matter. The result is clear. The sky you live under now is not quite the sky you grew up with. Days pass, weeks. You try to settle back into normal life, but you can't stop noticing the differences. Planes overhead have unfamiliar liveries. Flight tracking apps show aircraft types you don't recognise. Conversations with frequent flyer friends hit odd moments where they reference airlines or routes that don't match your memory, and you have to nod along and pretend you know what they're talking about. The worst part is that no one else notices. To everyone around you, this is just how aviation has always been. You're the only one who remembers both versions, the only one carrying the weight of a timeline that no longer exists anywhere except in your memory. You think about the gallery, the rope barrier, the Wright Flyer replica waiting in its sandbox, the control box humming, ready for another visitor to clip, another boarding pass and spin the anemometer and time it to another final boarding call. It would be so easy to go back. You know the timing now, know the feel of the anemometer, know exactly where to carve numbers in wet sand. You could do it again, and if you could do it again, you could maybe adjust things differently, fix some of the changes that feel wrong, prevent certain developments while encouraging others. But each time you cross would bring new changes, New ripples. How many iterations before you no longer recognize any of it? How many times can you tune the history of flight before the sky itself becomes alien? Before the basic vocabulary of aviation shifts so far from what you knew that you're effectively living in an alternate reality? 3 months after your first crossing, you're back at the same regional airport. Different trip, different destination, but the same facility, the same wind-lashed terminal, the same corridor leading to the closed gallery. You stand outside the rope barrier, looking at the faded sign, listening to the wind hammer the windows. Your boarding pass is in your pocket. Your flight is delayed. Of course it's delayed. This airport is always dealing with weather. The rope hangs loose, the way it always does. Beyond it, in the darkness, you can just make out the shape of the flyer replica, waiting. You think about all the small changes you've noticed. You think about the larger changes you suspect but can't prove. You think about the Wright brothers on that cold December morning, making those first hesitant hops into the sky, having no idea that someone from the future was watching, that their achievement would ripple not just forward but also backward, changed by the very observation of it. The PA chimes. Your flight is now boarding. Gate C4. You should go. Instead, you duck under the rope. The gallery smells the same, dust and salt and time. The flyer sits motionless, and in the dim light you can see that someone has been here recently. The sand in the pit has been disturbed, smoothed and reshaped, as if by wind that blows through dimensions. The control box hums its invitation. You clip your boarding pass to the strut. Your hand finds the anemometer, and you remember exactly how much pressure to apply, exactly how to let the cup spin up to speed. You wait, listening for the specific tone of the final boarding announcement, feeling your heartbeat sync with the hum of the machine. Because you need to know. You need to see it again, to witness that moment of first flight one more time, and maybe, just maybe, you can observe without changing. Maybe you can be there without leaving fingerprints on the timeline. Maybe if you're careful, if you time everything perfectly, you can experience the wonder without causing harm. Or maybe that's just what you tell yourself to justify going back. The announcement comes. You spin the anemometer. The needle climbs to 27 and holds. The lights shift to amber. The floor becomes sand. The walls dissolve into horizon. And you're standing on the dunes again, December 1903. Cold wind in your face, watching two bicycle mechanics prepare to change the world forever. The next story is about to begin. Please relax and enjoy. The rain hasn't stopped for 3 hours. You sit in the dark of your apartment, the only light coming from your laptop screen, casting that familiar blue-white glow across your desk. Outside, the city hums with distant traffic, muffled voices, the occasional siren. Inside, it's just you and the electronics, the laptop's fan, the refrigerator's cycle, the building's heating system clicking through the walls. You're not sure what pulled you to check the time zone settings. Maybe it was the insomnia, the restless energy that comes at midnight when sleep feels impossible, and your mind starts reaching for small, meaningless tasks. You click through the system preferences, scrolling past the usual suspects: New York, London, Tokyo, UTC. Your finger moves the trackpad absently, scanning the alphabetical list of cities and regions when something catches your eye. It's near the top, between Alexandria, Louisiana and Alice Springs. The entry reads, Alexandria, Last Light. You don't remember seeing it before, but then again, you've never really studied this list. Maybe it's always been there. Maybe it's some historical quirk, a reference to an old-time standard. You click it. More curious than anything else, your system clock jumps immediately to 23:59. You wait for the seconds to tick over. The digital display sits there, frozen. 23:59. The seconds don't appear, don't count down. Just those 4 digits, glowing at the corner of your screen like they've been pinned in place. You refresh the menu, still circa 23:59. You switch to a different time zone and back again. The moment you return to Alexandria Last Light, the clock snaps back to 23:59 and stops. A glitch, obviously, some corrupted preference file. You consider restarting, but instead you find yourself staring at those frozen numbers, feeling something you can't quite name. The room seems quieter suddenly, as if the ambient noise has been turned down a few notches. The rain against the window sounds farther away. Your bookshelves line the wall to your left. crammed with paperbacks and textbooks and that one hardcover you've read so many times the spine is cracked and soft. Without thinking about it, you reach for that familiar book, pulling it from its slot. The pages fall open to somewhere in the middle, a passage you could probably recite from memory. The laptop fan kicks into a higher gear, louder than it should be. The air in the room feels heavier, thicker, like the atmospheric pressure has shifted. You glance back at the screen. A notification appears, not in the standard system style. No company logo, no familiar interface design. Just a small rectangle of text in a font you don't recognize. Sync at turnover. Begin reading at midnight. Your heart rate picks up. This isn't how computers work. Notifications don't just appear from nowhere with cryptic instructions, but there it is, hovering over your desktop and underneath it, that unchanging 2359. The meaning assembles itself in your mind without you consciously working it out, like a rule you've always known but never had occasion to use. At the exact moment when 2359 becomes 000, if you start reading aloud from a physical book in your possession, something will happen. You don't know why you believe this. You don't know where the certainty comes from, but you feel it as surely as you feel the chair beneath you and the book's weight in your hands. You flip back to the first page, positioning yourself at the opening line. Your eyes move between the text and the clock. 23:59. Still 23. The laptop's fan grows louder still, a high-pitched whine creeping into its normal hum, as if the machine is straining against something, working harder than it should to maintain this impossible moment. The room's shadows seem to deepen. The blue glow from the screen stretches and distorts slightly, throwing strange angles across your desk. You hold the book steady, your thumb marking the place, your eyes locked on those frozen digits, and then, so subtle you almost miss it, the 9 flickers. A faint pulse runs through the air, a vibration you feel more than hear. Your breath catches. The moment stretches out, elastic, and you know without knowing that you're supposed to start reading the instant, the very instant that 000 appears. The 9 flickers again. The air hums, your throat tightens in anticipation. 23:59 becomes 000. You read the first sentence aloud, your voice steady and clear in the quiet room. In the beginning, there was only the question of how to preserve what could not be kept. As the words leave your mouth, the letters on the page begin to move. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in a slow drift. The familiar alphabet sliding and rearranging itself into characters you don't recognize, but somehow understand. Greek letters, ancient and angular. Your voice continues speaking the sentence as you watch the transformation spread, the words on every visible book spine in the room shimmering and reforming. Posters on the wall, sticky notes on your desk, the label on your water bottle, all of it shifts into Greek. Your voice sounds different, older, like the words are coming from somewhere deeper than your lungs, from a place that existed before you were born. The floor tilts, not violently, but with the slow, deliberate roll of a ship adjusting to a wave. Your stomach lifts and settles. The laptop's light stretches vertically, elongating into a tall rectangle that pulses brighter and brighter until it's less like a screen and more like a doorway of pure white light. You don't fall, you don't stumble. The tilt simply continues, reality pivoting around some axis you can't see, and when it finally levels out, the laptop's hum is gone. In its place, the rustle of countless pages, the murmur of many voices, the faint crackle of oil lamps burning in still air. You're standing. The room around you is vast beyond measuring, a cathedral of knowledge. Columns rise from the floor to a ceiling lost in shadow high above, each one carved with geometric patterns and symbols. Shelves climb the walls in tiered galleries, connected by wooden ladders and narrow walkways. Scrolls, thousands upon thousands of scrolls, fill every available surface, stacked horizontally on shelves, bundled in leather cases spread across reading tables. The air smells of papyrus and lamp oil, with an undertone of salt water drifting in from somewhere beyond the stone walls. It's warm, but not uncomfortably so, the heat of many bodies and many lamps in a space designed to hold both. People move through the hall with purpose. Scholars in simple robes, scribes with ink-stained fingers, young apprentices carrying armfuls of scrolls from one station to another. They speak in Greek, mostly, but you catch fragments of other languages too. Latin, Aramaic, something that sounds like early Arabic. The acoustics of the space turn individual voices into a constant gentle murmur, like water flowing over stones. You take a step forward. No one looks at you. A scribe walks past close enough that his robe should brush your arm, but instead you feel only a faint tingling, a cool rush of air as he passes through the space where you're standing. You're here, but not here. A witness, not a participant, an observer from another time, occupying the same space but not the same moment. You move deeper into the library, and you know without question that this is the library, the one from Alexandria, the one that burned. And as you walk, you begin to notice the tension underlying all this scholarly activity. A group of scholars stands around a table covered in organised stacks of scrolls, each stack marked with a symbol painted in red on a small wooden tag. One of the scholars, older, with grey in his beard, gestures emphatically toward a side chamber visible through an archway. Another scholar, younger, shakes his head, pointing to a wax tablet covered in what looks like a list or schedule. Their voices rise above the general murmur, urgent but controlled. You catch fragments as you drift closer. No time for everything. Priorities must be. Forces moving in the harbour. Your chest tightens. You understand what you're seeing. This isn't just a regular night at the library. This is triage. This is the last careful organisation before chaos arrives. Moving through the hall, you see more signs. Sealed bundles of scrolls being carried toward inner chambers, scribes working with unusual speed to copy certain texts, their hands moving in rapid practice strokes. Near one of the large windows, you spot a small crowd gathered, looking out towards something you can't see from this angle. You find stairs leading upward, winding around one of the massive columns. No one stops you, no one can see you, so you climb. The stairs are worn smooth in the centres, centuries of feet passing up and down. At the top, you emerge onto a balcony that overlooks both, the interior of the library and through a series of arched windows the city beyond. Alexandria at night is a constellation of torchlight and lamp flame. The streets glow with scattered points of fire. The harbour reflects the moon and the lights of ships. It's beautiful, but there's something wrong with the pattern. Too many lights moving in formation, too many torches concentrated in certain areas, spreading like burning oil on water. And in the distance, from a direction you can't quite pinpoint, you hear it, shouting, the metallic clash of weapons, the low roar of a crowd working itself toward violence. The library stands at the edge of that roar, still safe, still calm, but not for long. You can feel it in the air, in the way the scholars move with controlled panic, in the way certain people keep glancing toward the windows and doorways. This is the night before the fire, the last night the Library of Alexandria stands complete. Behind you, somewhere in the back of your awareness, you feel a faint digital pulse. Your laptop's clock still frozen at 0, waiting in another time. You descend back into the main hall, drawn by some instinct toward a large table near the centre. A scroll lies partially unrolled there, weighted down with smooth stones at each corner. As you approach, no one interferes. The scholars around it are focused on a different set of documents, their attention elsewhere. The scroll's surface is covered in dense Greek text, the ink a rich brown-black that has seeped slightly into the papyrus fibres. In the margins there are diagrams, geometric figures, star maps, what looks like a mechanical device with labelled parts. The writing is beautiful, each letter formed with care, the work of someone who understood that knowledge and aesthetics need not be separate. You lean closer, and the text seems to shift, to lean toward you, as if inviting you to read. Words emerge from the general flow, phrases that catch your eye. The body heals itself when given. Rotation of the sphere demonstrates. Mixture of elements in proportion. And then, like a voice speaking directly into your mind, you understand the rule. The way back. The price. To return to your own time, you must choose one sentence from any scroll in this library. Only one sentence, no more, no less. You must memorize it perfectly, every word, every pause, every nuance of meaning. When the flames reach the highest shelves of this hall, when the first true destruction begins, you must speak that sentence clearly into your laptop's microphone, The sentence will bridge the gap, pull you back across the centuries, but there's a cost. Each sentence you carry back erases something from your own time. One piece of modern knowledge will vanish from the world, gone as if it had never been discovered. Not from your memory. You'll remember both what was and what now is, but from everyone else's. From the textbooks and databases and collective understanding of your century. Something that was certain will become uncertain. Something that was known will become forgotten. The weight of this settles into your bones. You straighten up, looking around the library with new eyes. This isn't just a collection of ancient wisdom. It's a marketplace of terrible choices. You begin to move through the hall with purpose, reading labels, examining categories. The library's organisation becomes clear. Astronomy and mathematics in the eastern galleries, medicine and natural philosophy in the western chambers, literature and history in the northern sections, mechanics and practical arts in rooms near the southern entrances. Each scroll represents something lost to history, something your world has spent centuries trying to rediscover or replace. What if one of these sentences contains knowledge that could change medicine, prevent suffering, advance understanding? What if a single line from a medical text could save lives? But then the cost comes back to you, cold and certain. What if that same sentence erases antibiotics from your world? What if everyone wakes up tomorrow and penicillin is just a historical curiosity, something that never quite worked, a failed experiment? How many lives would that cost? You pass a scroll on navigation, detailed star charts that show constellations with notations about their movements. Another sentence that could change everything, or erase GPS, satellite navigation, the entire global positioning infrastructure that your world takes for granted. A scroll on mechanics catches your eye. Diagrams of what looks like a water-powered device, complex and clever. You read a single sentence describing its function, and even in translation, even across the centuries, you can tell it's brilliant. But what would you lose? What technology would blink out of existence? The impossible mathematics of the choice begins to overwhelm you. For every potential gain, a certain loss. For every piece of ancient wisdom recovered, a piece of modern certainty sacrificed. The scholars around you continue their urgent work, unaware of the future observer moving among them, unaware of the bargain being calculated in your mind. Time passes, though you're not sure how to measure it here, where your own time doesn't quite reach. The noises from outside grow louder, the shouting increases, you hear the distinct crash of something heavy falling, the splintering of wood, the roar of many voices raised together. The scholars' urgency transforms into something closer to panic, though they maintain their discipline. More scrolls are sealed and bundled. Small groups of trusted apprentices slip out through side doors, carrying precious cargo to places of safety. A senior scholar begins making rapid decisions, pointing to certain scrolls and ordering their immediate copying, pointing to others and shaking his head. Not enough time, too dangerous to try. You smell smoke. It's faint at first, just a hint of burning wood, carried on the air from somewhere outside. But it's there, and everyone in the library knows what it means. Through the high windows you see the first orange glow reflected off buildings in the distance. Fire in the city, fire coming closer. The laptop's digital pulse in the back of your mind speeds up, though there's no clock here, no way to measure seconds. You feel a countdown you can't see, a timer ticking toward an inevitable moment. You need to choose. Your feet carry you back through the hall past the organised chaos of scholars saving what they can. You find yourself drawn to a particular section, a cluster of scrolls marked with symbols you've come to recognise as medical texts. You scan the labels, the brief descriptions written in neat Greek on the outside of each case. One scroll calls to you. You can't explain why. Maybe it's the diagram visible on the exposed edge. Maybe it's something in the way the lamplight hits it, but you know this is the one. You carefully unroll it, using the same stones the scholars use to weight the corners. The text flows across the papyrus in organised sections. You read, translating as you go, and you find it. A single sentence describing a compound, a mixture of plant extracts and minerals, prepared in a specific way for treating infected wounds. The sentence is precise, detailed, almost like a chemical formula rendered in ancient Greek. It specifies proportions, methods, timing. You read it again, and again. You speak it silently, feeling the shape of the words in your mouth. You break it into sections, memorizing each part separately, then stringing them together. The Greek flows through your mind, the meaning crystallizing. Around you, the smoke thickens. The scholars are abandoning the outer rooms now, pulling back toward the inner chambers. Someone shouts about fire in the eastern galleries. You close your eyes and recite the sentence from memory, checking it against the original. Perfect. You have it. The first scream tears through the library. You look up and see it. Flames, real flames, licking along a shelf in one of the highest galleries. The fire moves faster than seems possible, catching dried papyrus and ancient wood, blooming from orange to white hot. Scrolls blacken and curl, their carefully preserved words vanishing in seconds. The scholars below cry out, some running toward the fire with water, others grabbing final armfuls of scrolls to save, still others simply standing in horror as centuries of work begins to burn. The flames spread across the highest tier like a living thing, hungry and fast. Embers fall like burning snow, starting new fires where they land. The temperature in the hall spikes. The air fills with smoke and the terrible smell of burning papyrus, burning wood, burning history. Something pulls at your chest, a hook behind your sternum tugging you backward, away from this moment. The library's floor tilts again, that same ship-like roll, but in reverse. The columns stretch and warp, the lamplight smearing into streaks. You catch one last glimpse, a scholar below, arms full of scrolls, looking up at the advancing flames with an expression of absolute grief. Then the tilt completes, and you're falling backward through time. Your apartment resolves around you in pieces. The desk, the chair, the laptop screen still showing 0000 and Alexandria Last Light in tiny letters. The book is still in your hand, pages open to that first sentence you read aloud. But the room is different somehow, quieter. The sound has been scrubbed away, leaving only a ringing silence. You set the book down carefully and pull the laptop closer. You open a voice recording app, the kind you use for reminders and notes. The interface loads, showing a blinking red microphone icon. Your heart hammers in your chest. You take a breath, and then you speak the sentence from the scroll, the Greek words flowing smoothly from your lips, the pronunciation as perfect as you can make it, the meaning clear in your mind. The compound, the proportions, the method, the treatment for infected wounds. As you finish, the recording timer stutters. 101, then back to 0, then 02. The file name flickers, the Latin letters briefly becoming Greek before snapping back. A small notification appears. Recording saved. Your system clock, frozen for so long, suddenly jumps. 101. Time is moving again. You sit in the silence of your apartment, the rain still tapping at the window, the city still humming beyond your walls. Everything looks the same. The same desk, the same bookshelves, the same laptop. But somewhere, reality is adjusting. Somewhere in the vast database of human knowledge, something is disappearing. One piece of medical understanding, one treatment or discovery or technique that your world knew yesterday is being quietly erased. At first, you feel nothing. You check your phone. The time shows 0002 now, normal, advancing like it should. You open a browser, search for random medical terms. Everything seems normal. Then you notice your bookshelf. One of your textbooks, a medical reference book you used in school, has a strange gap in it. You pull it out, flip through the pages. There's a section on antibiotics, and right in the middle, where there should be detailed information about a specific compound, there's just a short paragraph marked theoretical and historically speculated. You stare at the text. You remember this section being longer. You remember detailed protocols, dosage information, case studies. Now it's just a vague historical note about a treatment that showed promise in limited trials, but was never successfully replicated. You put the book back, your hands slightly shaky. Opening your laptop again, you search for the name of the antibiotic you remember. The results come back confused. Academic papers questioning its efficacy, forum posts debating whether it ever really worked. Pharmaceutical. Companies listing it as discontinued or experimental. The world has forgotten. Your sentence from the scroll, that ancient Greek formula for treating infected wounds, has displaced this modern knowledge. You traded a future discovery for a past one, and now only you remember both versions. You close the browser, your stomach tight. The implications spread out in your mind like cracks in ice. You've changed history, or rather, you've changed the present, rewritten what people know and don't know. The antibiotic that's now theoretical probably saved thousands of lives in the version of the world you remember. How many people will die now because it's gone? But then again, the compound from the scroll, the ancient formula you brought back, what could that do? If you can figure out how to communicate it, how to translate it into modern terms, could it save lives too? Could it be better than what was lost? The question has no answer. You sit in the dark, the laptop's glow washing over you, and you understand that you've stepped into something far larger and more terrible than you imagined. Hours pass. Maybe you sleep, maybe you don't. When you next focus on the laptop screen, early morning light is filtering through your window. You should be exhausted, but you feel wired, electric. You navigate back to the time zone settings, half expecting Alexandria, last light to be gone, removed like a glitch fixed by a system update. It's still there. You hover your cursor over it, not clicking, just hovering. The option is still available. You could go back, tonight, or the next night, or any night you choose to set the clock to 23:59 and read at midnight. You could bring back more sentences, more lost knowledge, more ancient wisdom, and each time you'd lose something modern. Each trip would peel away another layer of certainty from your century, leaving gaps that only you would notice. You think about what that would mean. A dozen trips? 20? 50? Each one carefully extracting a valuable sentence from the burning library, each one erasing something from the present. What kind of world would you create? One rich in ancient philosophy and astronomy and medicine, but missing random pieces of modern infrastructure. A world where people have deep wisdom about the stars but can't quite remember how to make certain plastics. Where they understand complex geometry but have forgotten key principles of electrical engineering. The trades would be random, chaotic. You'd have no control over what gets erased. The universe decides the price, and you only learn the cost after you've paid it. You close the system preferences and sit back staring at your bookshelf. Some of the spines look different now. Not dramatically, just subtly wrong, like you're looking at them through slightly different eyes. You can't tell if they actually changed, or if you're just more aware of them now, more conscious of how fragile certainty really is. Over the following days, you notice more gaps, small ones mostly. A friend mentions a medical treatment that never quite worked right, and you remember it working fine. A news article describes a technology as recently developed, that you could swear has been around for years. A professor in an online lecture offhandedly mentions a scientific principle that remains frustratingly incomplete, and you have a flash of memory of it being settled fact. No one else notices. Why would they? This is the only world they know. The inconsistencies are invisible to everyone except you. You become a living record of two timelines, the one that was and the one that is. The temptation returns night after night. You'll be reading, or working, or just lying in bed unable to sleep, and you'll think about the library. About those thousands of scrolls, each one containing knowledge that could matter, that could change things, that could help. You imagine going back and bringing out sentences on engineering, on philosophy, on medicine, on the nature of matter. You imagine slowly, carefully building a new version of your world, one ancient sentence at a time. But you also imagine the cost accumulating. Modern medicine becoming unreliable, full of gaps. Technology becoming unpredictable, missing key components. The solid ground of scientific knowledge becoming Swiss cheese, full of holes that no one can quite explain. At what point does the trade become a net loss? At what point do you create more suffering than you prevent? You don't know. The math is impossible. The variables are infinite. 3 nights after your first trip, you set the clock to Alexandria last light. Again, just to see, just to test whether it still works. 23:59 appears and freezes. The room grows heavy. The laptop fan whines. You sit there with a book in your hands, watching the unchanging numbers, feeling the weight of the choice pressing down on you. You could read at midnight. You could go back. You could bring something else through. The clock stays frozen. The moment stretches. Your finger hovers over the trackpad, ready to switch back to your normal time zone, ready to let midnight pass in the ordinary way, but you don't click, not yet. Because the truth is, you want to go back. You want to walk through those halls again, to see the scholars working in lamplight, to read scrolls that no one has seen in millennia. You want to feel the weight of history, the presence of all that lost knowledge. And more than that, you want to save something. Even if the cost is high, even if the trade is terrible, there's a part of you that can't bear the thought of letting it all burn without trying to grab whatever you can. The sentence you brought back, that ancient medical formula, could be important, could be revolutionary. You don't know yet. You haven't had time to work out the modern equivalent, to translate ancient measurements into contemporary terms. But it's there, preserved in your memory, a seed of knowledge that might grow into something that matters. Isn't that worth it? Isn't saving even one thing from the fire worth the price? You watch the clock. 23:59. Frozen. Waiting. You think about the world you're creating with these trades. A world that remembers ancient wisdom but forgets modern certainties. A world that looks backward and forward simultaneously, caught between two versions of knowledge. Is that better or worse than what you had before? You don't know. Maybe there's no objective answer. Maybe it depends on what you value, certainty or wisdom, modern safety or ancient understanding, the comfort of complete knowledge or the excitement of recovered mystery. The clock doesn't advance. It won't, until you either read at the turnover or switch away from Alexandria's frozen time. Your apartment is silent except for the laptop's strained fan and your own breathing. Outside, the city goes about its ordinary business. Billions of people living in a present that has already been slightly altered by your first choice, though none of them know it. You are the only one who carries both worlds in your head. The only one who remembers what was traded away and what was brought back. The only one who knows about the libraries last night and the strange bridge between then and now. The weight of that knowledge sits heavy in your chest. It's lonely, being the only witness to your own changes. It's frightening, holding the power to reshape what everyone knows without any of them being aware of it. But it's also intoxicating. The power to recover what was lost. The ability to reach across centuries and pull wisdom forward into a world that desperately needs it. You look at your bookshelves again, at all those volumes full of modern knowledge, built up over generations of discovery and experiment and careful documentation. Solid, reliable, true. Except now you know how fragile it all is. How easily pieces can be erased, replaced, forgotten. How the ground beneath certainty is thinner than anyone realizes. The clock still shows 23:59. The choice is still available. Tonight, tomorrow, any night you want. You think about the flames spreading across the library's higher shelves, about the scholars' faces as they watch their life's work burn, about the scrolls curling and blackening and vanishing into ash. You think about all the sentences you didn't save, all the knowledge that was lost forever while you carefully memorized just one line. How many trips would it take to save something truly significant? How much of your own century would you be willing to sacrifice? The questions spiral. There are no easy answers. There might not be any answers at all. Finally, as the first hints of real dawn start to brighten your window, you move your cursor to the time zone menu and switch back to your local time. The clock jumps immediately to 05:47, resuming its normal forward march. The weight in the air lifts. The laptop fan quiets to its usual hum. The room feels ordinary again, but you know the option remains. Alexandria, Last Light, is still there in the list, still waiting, still offering its terrible trade. You close the laptop and stand, stretching muscles stiff from sitting too long. You need sleep. You need to process what you've done, what you've changed, what you might do next. But as you move toward your bed, you catch a glimpse of your reflection in the dark window. Tired, thoughtful, marked by something invisible. You look the same as you did yesterday, but you're not the same. You're carrying knowledge that no one else has, memory of a world that no one else remembers. You're living between two libraries now, the modern one, built on centuries of methodical discovery, and the ancient one, burning forever in that last terrible night. And every time you close your eyes, you can still smell the smoke, still hear the crackle of flames consuming papyrus, still feel the weight of all those unspoken sentences waiting to be saved. The choice will be there tomorrow night, and the night after, and the night after that. One sentence at a time, one loss at a time, one impossible trade at a time. You lie down in the growing dawn light, and behind your closed eyelids, Greek letters flicker and dance, arranging themselves into sentences you haven't yet memorized, knowledge you haven't yet stolen, fires you haven't yet outrun. The clock on your nightstand ticks forward, second by second, into a future that's already not quite the same as the one you were born into. And somewhere, in a time that's always 23:59, the library waits. The next story is about to begin. Please relax and enjoy.